and the hand of terror arose, controlled by the ultimate evil. "Come on, hand of terror, arise, damn you!" At first, it tried to free the ultimate evil, but it did not succeed. Methinks that exploring the surrounding area would be a sensible strategy. However, to do this, light would be required. Still not bright enough. An old throne room was revealed by the light. The circumstances remained a mystery. Behold, the creatures of the overjoyed evil had apparently been much more industrious than it had thought. A great dungeon was revealed behind the wall. Everything was already in place. Doors, traps, a well-filled treasury. Treasury? And where, if you please, is this treasury? Oh, well, one can't expect too much of these mindless little snots. First of all, some gold had to be dug out to make space for a treasury to be created. A huge monstrosity loomed out of the darkness on 8 legs. This dungeon's human guards had been ancient history for a long while. Now it was home to a huge spider and her brood. Would Sam and Frodo escape it and continue their journey to Mount Doom, or was this the end of the Ring-Bearer? Hang on a minute, that's not the right text. Where were we? Oh yes, a huge spider, henceforth called the Spider Queen. It would be necessary to eliminate the Spider Queen before the horde could reach the surface. The basics of a dungeon were now in place. However, the brewery was puny and didn't really have room to store beer barrels in, and the treasury was also anything but impressive in size. Quickly, the expansion-hungry evil set out to enlarge its dungeon. The profound evil had had enough of dungeon sightseeing and now wanted to move to the surface to try a dish that is best served cold. Revenge. Some Alliance members were bound to be guarding the entrance to the overworld. A fine appetizer for a vengeful evil. A hidden room opened as the little snots dug through a wall. Inside was a healing potion that could heal a wounded creature. The little snots came across a small room containing a healing potion whilst pointlessly digging around in the underground. The ultimate evil could throw one of its wounded creatures on the potion to heal it. The little snots found a healing potion in a hidden room. This was able to restore one of the ultimate evil's creatures to full health.
The evil has awoken, but its brothers are still asleep.
Huh? What on earth was that? That's not in my script. What a weirdo. No matter. We'd better get back to concentrating on the dungeon. An eerie gong rang through the halls. It did not bode well for the ultimate evil's treasury stocks, for at each sounding of the gong, the creatures would collect their undeserved wages. However, there was little it could do about this, as it was chained to the throne. Thus it had to give free rein to its servants' desires. For the time being, at least. The feisty evil's little snots dug up a spider's nest, thereby preempting some of my stories. Since there were no powerful fighting units in the dungeon, it was advisable for everyone to keep very, very still for the time being. At the exact moment in which the ultimate evil hired an orc, the spiders suddenly became aware of its presence and attacked the dungeon. This was an incredible coincidence, and was in no way connected with any triggers or scripts in the level map. The vile perversion, once called the Spider Queen, had nothing more with which she could fight the horde. Later, the sensitive evil would have her innards made into a lava lamp. The way to the surface was open. Now it was time to put those vengeance plans into practice. The vile evil wanted to take this opportunity to utter a really sinister laugh. But unfortunately, its physical state made this unviable. Instead, it asked the narrator to do a bit of sinister laughter on its behalf. Oh well, here goes. Deep breath. The Spider Queen sent forth a wave of her children. Of course, the ultimate evil was fully aware of this danger, and immediately prepared to defend itself against them. At least, that's what I hope. The Spider Queen again sent her children out to attack the dungeon, even though this tactic had failed the last time. A certain AI programmer could really have made a bit more of an effort with this. And another wave of spiders set out to destroy the ultimate evil. Little snots were all well and good, but were too weak and cowardly to defend the dungeon. Since it was not able to defend itself, the ultimate evil would have to hire some orcs. But they would require food. Liquid food. Well, beer to be precise. So the next important thing to build was a brewery. and that would require some space to be created. One of the little snots started working on the brewing copper. The nostalgic evil banished all thoughts of Oktoberfest and brass bands. Those would have to wait. More important tasks had to be completed first. The hard-working evil effortlessly built a brewing copper so that delicious beer could be brewed as soon as possible. There was now an area cleared for the brewery site, and with quick finger snaps from the Hand of Terror, the room stood ready. With a finger snap of the Hand of Terror, the brewery was built. I said the brewery was built. Hello? Get on with building that damn brewery. And the new brewery shone in all its glory. Wait a minute. That's no brewery. Damn you! You were supposed to build a brewery, not that crap. Come on, tear it down, start again. And this time get it right. However, the absurd evil was still hesitating. Alcohol? Consumed in the dungeon? Wouldn't that increase the crime rate? Of course not. There's no such thing in this game. The area for the brewery had still not been excavated. Apparently a certain player, a certain ultimate evil, has not been in a position to dig out those few tiles. Now get going, chop, chop, chop. Don't think there's anything doing here anymore. I'm off for a coffee break. Let me know if that chap shows up again. Okay. Excellent. But the recently built brewery lacked a brewing copper. With a sigh of resignation, the overworked evil set about taking care of that too. Suddenly, one of the repellent evil's servants became very thirsty. This was typical of a troop member of the unanonymous alcoholics known as the Horde. The Dipso made his way to the nearest brewery to quench his thirst. A thirsty orc arrived at the brewery. Eager and slavering, he started demolishing the alcohol-hoarding evil's stock of beer. The psionically gifted evil could sense the presence of something important that was buried to the south. It instructed its little snots to dig in that direction. As quick as a fart, the little snot made his way to the marked position and began to dig. The Hand of Terror swiftly marked a few small gold veins so that the little snots could excavate them. As soon as a gold vein was selected, a little snot immediately set out to mine valuable gold for the greedy evil. The Hand of Terror was a little out of breath because of the many things that had to be done, but eventually it got round to marking the little gold veins which were set to fill the treasury. Apparently the Hand of Terror has gone on some kind of strike and refuses to obey the ultimate evil's desire for gold. It would seem it's having much more fun doing other things. Oh, God, I really don't want to know what that hand is up to right now. There was still no gold being mined, although the narrator had talked about it several times. Apparently someone was no longer interested in the creation of a thriving dungeon capable of extracting a terrible revenge on heroes and the Alliance of Good. Instead, this someone was obviously considering devoting themselves to their Zen garden to control their desire for revenge. Come on, please. A fantastic story with crazy missions interspersed with my entertaining short stories awaits you. All you need to do is select those little gold veins. Come on. You know you don't want to miss out on that, do you? The ultimate evil hesitated a little. Would there be dangers lurking in the south, which it would not yet be able to defeat? It quickly dismissed this idea. After all, the ultimate evil. What could possibly pose a threat to it out there? Except, of course, that group of heroes who had banished it once before. The little snots still didn't know what they were meant to be doing. At last, the Hand of Terror marked the area to be excavated. Good grief. Have you ever played a game? Please select the highlighted area in order for it to be excavated, or look at the Help, where you will find detailed explanations of what to do. Now, move it! The ultimate evil had maxed out the dungeon completely and could no longer hire any more creatures, unless, of course, it disposed of the odd troublemaker in the pit of uselessness situated in the throne room. The creature disappeared into the pit of uselessness with a long drawn and gradually diminishing This particular act of wickedness brought a smile to the face of the ultimate evil. The Hand of Terror flew through the throne room, following each and every thought the ultimate evil had. Obviously, the ultimate evil's thoughts had just wandered off to other things, so the Hand of Terror was left hovering, lost on the spot. The first little snot appeared. It was completely ready to work in the dungeon and to crawl in the dust before the ultimate evil. Little snots were important to the ultimate evil because they took care of many important little things, such as excavating new areas. After very careful consideration, the ultimate evil now decided to recruit a little snot. The mentally somewhat challenged evil apparently was having a few problems focusing on the current task at hand. But then suddenly the moment came when it hired a little snot. Dear ultimate evil, I think we got off to a bit of a bad start. What is meant to be happening is that I tell an exciting, atmospheric, and compelling story, and from time to time make predictions of what you're about to do. When that happens, it would be really great if you could kindly work with me and do what I say. Is that clear? So get on with it. Hire one of those damn little snots, or I swear I will crawl out of this stupid screen and rip off your head, and then I'll down your neck, and if you've still not had enough, I'll in your ear. All right. Both beer and gold were now available in the dungeon, so it was time to hire some creatures to defend against greedy heroes or whatever else snuck around underground. At present, it was only simple orcs declaring undying loyalty to the ultimate evil. The rest of the horde was scattered to the winds. One louse-infested orc crawled up from the depths and declared allegiance to the ultimate evil. The first step towards the creation of a powerful army had been taken. Orcs were defensive close combat specialists, capable of dealing with many opponents. However, they were very vulnerable to ranged attacks. The sluggish evil was still half asleep, and therefore needed a little time to get going. It did, however, finally hire an orc, in exactly the same way it had previously done with the little snots. The greedy evil still hadn't hired an orc. Obviously, it found it impossible to be parted from its precious treasure. Nevertheless, it had to do this, because otherwise who would guard its riches? That thought made it instantly change its mind, and it didn't hesitate for 1 second longer. The procrastination ended, and it finally hired an orc. The snail-like evil was slow. So very slow. It took almost eons to create even one tiny bit of an orc army. Fortunately, at this very moment, some orcs fell from the heavens to strengthen the army. This was a miracle, and had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that a certain narrator had got hideously bored and was doing all he could to speed up the process. After a few flying sessions, the ultimate evil was able to control the hand with ease. The time had come to call forth creatures who were completely devoted to it and would do its dirty work. Little snots were the dregs of each and every dungeon, and spent their time taking care of it. The expansion-mad evil hired one snot on the spot. The eyes of the mentally challenged evil swept over one of the dungeon doors. It was child's play for the Hand of Terror to open and close these for its servants. They were, of course, firmly locked at all times to the enemy. The nameless evil's creatures came upon a spider's nest during their search for an entrance to the overworld. It would take more than one orc to smoke that out. The abysmal evil used the Hand of Terror to grab several of the creatures that were still completely inexperienced at fighting, and threw them onto the spider's nest. The spiders dropped like flies. The strategically well-versed evil patted itself on the back, proud that it had led its troops into battle with such aplomb. And by led, I just simply mean chucking them at the enemy. The ultimate evil had not yet picked up any of its creatures, because it was actually somewhat disgusted by the orcs. Unsurprising, really, as cleanliness was a foreign concept for orcs. The cowardly evil was still hesitant to pick up its creatures and throw them onto the fight. Was there no other way? Could this not be resolved peacefully? Is it not true that violence only breeds more violence? Instead, the peaceful evil now planned to get its troops to make daisy chains. But flowers only grow in the overworld, and for that it had to get past the spiders. The dungeon of the expansion-mad evil grew and prospered, but unfortunately it had reached the maximum possible population it could currently manage. Now a creature would have to be thrown into the bottomless pit before any others could be brought in. The sadistic evil encouraged its creature to work a little faster, with a friendly but not at all gentle slap. The ultimate evil had the feeling that its servants were not really putting their backs into the work. Might a hearty slap from the Hand of Terror change that? Once most of the gold had been mined, the Hand of Terror quickly created a treasury on the spot so that the precious metal could be safely stored. The clever evil mastered this task with flying colours. From now on, little snots could use the treasury to store mined gold. It was then at the greedy evil's disposal whenever more rooms needed to be built or new creatures recruited. Effortlessly, the ultimate evil's hand of terror set to work to build a treasury. Again, the thoughts of the confused evil wandered off into the far yonder. Apparently, it was of the opinion that it had better things to do than follow the story. What better things could there possibly be? The dungeon was still without a treasury. The ultimate evil was poking around in the user manual again. It would surely be much faster and easier to make use of the help function instead. The insidious evil entered King's Ending. A small, pitiful group of defenders stood in its way. Suddenly, the doors of several houses in the city opened, and with a loud roar, defenders bore down on the rather surprised evil. An ambush. And then suddenly, the absolute evil hit the ground. The day was saved, and good had triumphed. The Alliance lived happily ever after, whilst the defeated forces of evil had to eke out the remainder of their miserable existence underground. No, of course not. In reality, absolute evil was not defeated, but, it just took a little comfort break. A short while later, it arose once again. And once again, the absolute evil had to have a break. Good grief. You really aren't on this, are you? How many more times do you intend to die in this tutorial? The invincible evil had crushed the defenders. King's Ending had been defeated. At least, that's what it thought. Suddenly, the final heroes of the Alliance emerged from nowhere. Another ambush? Now, this was becoming very boring. But wait, this time it was different. Instead, the heroes raised their hands and started singing an incomprehensible chant. A magical ritual? This did not bode well. Well, actually, it bode the arrival of good things, great things, unless you happen to be the absolute evil. Powerful magic spread through the city and bore down upon the stunned evil. The whole power of good pressed down on it. Golden light spread all around, and when it disappeared, no trace of evil remained. Good had triumphed. There was tumultuous cheering, and for the first time in ages, laughter was heard ringing throughout the city. Even the forest could not withstand the aura of the ultimate evil, and beat a hasty retreat. After countless battles, the forces of the absolute evil reached the Alliance capital, King's Ending. The laughable remnants of the forces of good had come here to make ready for the final battle. Evil would pay a high price indeed to storm those fortress walls, or so they thought. Suddenly, a rumble rose from deep within the earth. Stones burst asunder, revealing an ancient path into the depths. Out of the depths of Stygian darkness arises the invincible evil. The absolute evil had discovered a medal. These legendary awards ensured a creature could be made even more powerful. Only one downside. A creature could only wear one at a time. The defenders in front of the city had been beaten to a pulp and defeated. Now the time had come to attack King's Ending. The final battle beckoned. But what's this? The wicked evil was hesitating, rather than taking the fastest route to the city gate. Did it want to keep the defenders shaking in their boots with fear? The abysmally bad evil had still not made any moves towards attacking the city. Instead, it had been feverishly picking its nose to triumphantly bring forth a slimy bogey. Hello there. So what's with the attack on the city? Is it still on? Come on now, get a move on. Get yourself over to that gate. I'm not being paid to just sit around all day on my behind. Well, thinking about it, I am actually being paid to sit around on my behind. So just take your time, enjoy the view. Why don't you have a little wander back to the start again? Perhaps you overlooked something. No need to stress. Now, only one tiny camp offers any resistance to the absurdly evil evil. And even that won't be able to hold out for much longer. The absolute evil destroyed the defenders' camp in the east with the greatest of ease. The absolute evil destroyed the defenders' camp in the west with the greatest of ease. A few of the Alliance units had entrenched themselves here. A determined absolute evil marched towards them in order to strike them down with its mighty weapon. Although a bit hesitant at first, the absolute evil eventually marched with determination towards the defenders in order to slay them. This story flows slower than the sludge in my nostrils. Get a move on. Go there. Beat up heroes. It's not catapult science. Projectiles from the Alliance's catapults darkened the sky. But the Horde's fighting skills were at their best in darkness, if they survived. And the absolute evil took yet another hero to the slaughtering block. The forces of good never had a chance against the absolute evil. Nothing and no one could stop the invincible evil. Absolute evil strode like a war god through the defenders' ranks and smote them with ease to the ground. Defeating good was as easy as taking candy from a baby for the unstoppable evil. Candy? Yum. With earth-shaking steps, the unstoppable evil began its trek towards the front. In the terribly improbable event that it may have forgotten how that works, a formidable help function has been provided. I said, with earth-shaking steps, the unstoppable, if somewhat sluggish evil began its trek towards the front. The inexplicably obtuse evil began its trek towards the front. At least it was supposed to. It says so right here, in the Dungeons 2 strategy guide. Okay, maybe this is all going just a bit too fast for you. Look, there are a few helpful tutorial thingies you might want to have a look at before you start the game, all right? Okay, I'll wait for you. Yes, right here. I promise. Eyes ablaze with greed, the insidious evil gazed upon the blood-drenched battlefield. Here the last defenders of good would die, and an age of evil begin. The absolute evil, on the other hand, watched the scene from a safe distance. It wondered whether it should get itself a little snack while its creatures did the rest. But this was hardly the time, for although the hordes of evil were indeed almost bursting with their zest for action, their complete and utter lack of tactics were no match for the defenders. With a sigh, a stressed evil sadly dismissed any idea of a little picnic. Obviously, it was time to intervene in the battle personally. The presence of the absolute evil was also reflected in the land itself. Grass withered, and in places the ground tore open to reveal bubbling lava. The city gate was firmly barricaded by the Alliance's archers, but the absolute evil would not allow itself to be held up by such a ridiculous impediment. So, go get 'em! Destroy them now! Ha 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 ha! Oh yes, sorry, stay in character. The absolute evil used its all-powerful magic to eliminate the archers and open the gate to the city. The absolute evil had a good long think, but at precisely that exact moment it decided to act and to deploy its overwhelming magic powers. But this proved to be a complete fallacy. It would appear that the distracted evil was not aware that it should use one of its powers here, something that could have been done with ease via the GUI. If in doubt, the formidable help utility could also have been consulted on the matter. Secretly, the confused evil was debating whether it wouldn't be much nicer to watch a series of My Little Unicorn. All this stuff about evil campaigns was just so totally overrated. The defenders of the city were mightily relieved. Obviously, the sluggish evil had got tired of the siege and lost the urge to spread evil all over the world. Using its legend, wait for it, dairy powers, the absolute evil destroyed the impediment with ease and simultaneously eliminated a whole group of defenders. True story. The road to the capital was now clear. The absolute evil did not hesitate for even 1 nanosecond. Actually, the cowardly evil did hesitate. What would await it in the city? Would its lousy defenders, which it previously had managed to slay in droves, suddenly come up with something more serious? Lost in thought, the contemplative evil didn't dare venture into the city. What if it were a trap? It had actually been suspiciously easy so far, almost like the first level of a video game. The thoughtful evil was still pondering. It could hardly turn around and not bother with the city. What would its minions think? Would there be giggling behind evil's back? Would evil become the object of their scorn, the butt of their jokes, just like the days back in Seville's School of Rehabilitation for Former Archvillains? No, no. Under no circumstances could it end like that. Not again. Again, the Alliance sent a group of heroes into the Ultimate Evil's dungeon. Another Alliance troop was dispatched to try and break the Ultimate Evil's defenses. An Alliance troop attacked the dungeon. The insidious Evil's traps were quickly being put in place. Seemingly unable to learn from experience, the Alliance mounted a further wave of attacks against the dungeon. Once again, an Alliance troop set out towards the Ultimate Evil's dungeon. Their fate was already sealed. After the Alliance had repeatedly failed with their clumsy wave tactics, the decision was made to overrun the Ultimate Evil with a single giant attack. Of course, this would fail, but it would be close. Very close. As well as countless undead, these underground catacombs were also home to some giant rats. It might be possible for the Almighty Evil to make use of the fact that these rats were only too happy to gnaw a few bones and set these two factions on each other. The creatures entered the ancient catacombs, while the suspicious evil kept at a safe distance. Somewhere down here lurked the evil that controlled the undead and sent them into the dungeon. It had to be destroyed, no question about it.
This is where the dead do rest. There is no place for the living here. Meet my sword. Frostgarn is hungry.
It was obvious that negotiations were not an option here. Therefore, the powerful evil chose one of its most well-proven tactics to solve the problem. Hit it till it stops moving.
You will suffer. New food for my army. For the Lich King. Oh, that's me, isn't it? You will serve the Dark Lord. Your time has run out. I am a horseman of the apocalypse, just without a horse.
In the middle of the posh lands, directly at a crossroads, there lay the small but well-fortified village of Bunnyfield. The Alliance would send small attack groups towards the dungeon from here as well. Just in time, or rather better late than never, some of the Horde's troops appeared from the south. They had presumably just come from paying a brief visit to their favourite pub, the Winchester, which was run by two brothers. Whatever. These troops came to help, and the Ultimate Evil could certainly make good use of them. In the north, the Plague Lands, or maybe Posh Lands, were bordered by an insurmountable wall of solid ice. No one knew what lay beyond, in the wilds of the north, although rumours of terrible monsters and the like abounded. Someday, the Ultimate Evil would love to spend a holiday there. Instead of pursuing the small matter of controlling the undead, the Ultimate Evil decided to make itself nice and cozy. While this was also a kind of strategy, it was certainly not a good one. The Ultimate Evil had still not done anything about the threat the undead presented. Obviously, it had not seen enough zombie movies to know exactly what that meant. The undead continued to enjoy the best of health. Actually, no, not really, because they were already dead. It's more about the fact that the Ultimate Evil had still done nothing about them. Hello? Anyone there? Those undead won't just disappear by themselves. They're not going to just die of old age. They're already dead. If you want to complete this mission, you're going to have to shake a leg and take care of those undead. Mission accomplished. The Posh Lands were history, so 3 cheers for the Plague Lands. It wouldn't be long before the undead would rise again. Skeletons, zombies, white wanderers, well, maybe not the latter. And rise they did. To be honest, they were actually less than the astounded evil expected, but still. It used its mental abilities to reach out to them in order to seize them and to bring them under its control. But the evil did not succeed. Another power had already taken possession of them. A massive shape rose from a crypt in the east. It started to speak in the Ultimate Evil's direction.
You hold no power here. I will only obey the King of Gondor. I mean the Ultimate Evil. It is time for you to die, O living ones.
This was a tad unexpected for the Ultimate Evil. It would seem there was an impostor out there trying to usurp its title. It would have to worry about that later, though. This threat had to be dealt with first, as the undead were obviously baying for a fight with the Horde. It could safely be assumed that whoever was controlling the undead was doing so from somewhere up in the wild region of the Plague Lands. The ultimate evil would need to send its troops there in order to eliminate this threat. Once again, the strange figure appeared, just like it had done several times before. The creatures of the unspeakable evil paused, confused, uncertain what to do.
You fool! I warned you not to start a civil war! For that, you will pay!
With these words, the mysterious figure disappeared once again. Probably hadn't had enough breakfast. Never mind. There's a skeleton king in the crypt just waiting to be pounded into a pulp by the horde. You shouldn't keep him waiting. That would be rude. And so the ultimate evil was defeated. Hang on. What? Defeated? Yep, that's what it says right here. Strange end to the story. I don't think that's how it ended. Maybe you should go back a bit to an earlier part of the story and give it another go. Hipster Bridge, the Alliance's big city in the northwest, fell victim to the horde. A huge cemetery from the old Plaguelands quickly rose from its ruins. A cemetery which could have easily provided the set for filming a zombie music video. The capital of the Poshlands lay in the northwest of the country. Hipster Bridge. Yes, granted, a terrible name, but what can you do? Despite its ridiculous name, Hipster Bridge was heavily guarded and would resist attack by all means possible. The Horde would have to work hard here to bring the city back into the Plaguelands. Not all of the Plaguelands had been conquered by the Alliance. One area was so especially steeped in evil that it could not be cultivated at all. It was quickly covered with a magical spell and surrounded by a massive wall. An entrance would probably only be found once the rest of the Poshlands had been destroyed. From the book Plaguelands, Until the Morning Mists Arise. The undead in these lands were a scary bunch. They lacked any of the glitz and glamour which we now associate with the undead, particularly vampires. It would be completely futile to search for a teen love story anywhere around here.
Oh, God! It's the Slender Man! Run!
Oh, sorry, just my shadow. Stanley was wondering whether he should return to his desk. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong script. Only 20 years lay between the deadly Plaguelands and the unpleasantly swanky Poshlands. It was incredible what a little paint could do. Once, the Plaguelands were a cozy place for the undead. However, after the ultimate evil's fall, the place was taken over by a group known as the Crimson Crusade. They transformed it into the Poshlands. They even made a film about it, a very sad story called Unlife is Beautiful. Back when the Plaguelands still existed, harmony and unity pervaded the lands. There were no conflicts, because the undead do not wage war against each other. There were no needy, because undead do not have any needs. All in all, an idyllic utopia. If you're dead. By the way, did you know that in the first dungeons, a certain Calypso, not to be confused with the great publisher Calypso, joined in the game? You didn't? Well, I wanted to astound you with this momentous bit of trivia. You really should get back to playing the game again. Oh yes, back to the Plaguelands. Here, the undead sometimes like to have grand dances, real thrillers, so to speak. But those days were gone once the Poshlands came into existence. By the way, the Dungeons 2 developers were not broken into and no one stole the source code. The game was also not split into two. The developers have not even randomly offended people on social media or slept with any journalists. All in all, the game development was very uneventful. That's such a yawningly boring story. How did it ever make it into the dialogue? There were few that could withstand the ultimate evil's horde. The Alliance's military camps in the south were obviously not amongst those rare few. They disappeared from the surface faster than a brain amidst a horde of zombies. There was a small Alliance military camp to the south, which guarded the border to the Poshlands. An attack from inside the Poshlands would be sure to surprise them. The Alliance's outpost in the east was unable to resist the horde. Another part of the Poshlands fell to make room for some beautiful tombs, from which undead would soon rise. In the east of the Poshlands lay a small Alliance camp that looked after the area's agriculture. This wouldn't be of much help against a bunch of crazed orcs. After the demons had escaped the ultimate evil, it was very keen to bring undead creatures back under its control. To this end, the evil travelled to an area that was formerly known as the Plaguelands. At one time, a huge cemetery graced the countryside here, providing a happy place for the undead to hang out. assuming the undead ever had any concept of happiness, that is. But that was 20 years ago. Since then, the Alliance had turned this place into the Poshlands. It was an unbearably good place, which was heavily guarded due to its dubious past. The ultimate evil would first need to take care of those guards and completely destroy the place before it could take control of the undead. Although the Horde was still exposed to constant Alliance attacks, the offensive tactic-loving evil did not hesitate. It sent some cannon fodder, creatures, to the surface. The last Alliance forces had been defeated, and with them the armies of good had been driven back, for the time being at least. Now it was time to change tack and start the attack. The Poshlands now needed to be restored to their former glory. The Black Boar Tavern came to an inglorious end after the Horde visited the establishment. They not only refused to pay the tab, but burned the whole tap room down to boot. Well, quite understandable, really. There was no orc beer on tap. There was a tavern in the woods called the Black Boar, one of those classic hero meeting places. A bard stood in front of this establishment, advertising the ultimate evil's dungeon in his refrains, which regularly resulted in heroes flooding into the underground, a habit he would soon be losing. As a careless little snot dug through the underground, it unfortunately stumbled upon an old mausoleum, which was home to some mindless undead. And they were hungry. Very, very hungry. Oops! That must have been what the little snot thought when it unearthed an ancient tomb filled with angry skeletons and zombies in the underground. These showed little interest in obeying the unspeakable evil's orders, but moved with a half-hearted growl of brains towards its creatures. The Skeleton King was unable to withstand the unspeakable evil's creatures and crumbled to dust under their mighty blows like a vampire in sunlight, just like a proper vampire does. Not one of those little twilight wuzzes. But I digress. The undead remained completely unimpressed and steadfastly refused to be controlled by the ultimate evil. Something out there was stopping them. However, without a leader, they were no longer a threat to the Horde. They just trudged about mindlessly, completely devoid of control. They were therefore useless to the ultimate evil. So the evil pushed on towards King's Ending in order to destroy the Alliance's remaining heroes there. Word of the ultimate evil's presence had spread among the supporters of the Alliance like wildfire. The evil would soon have to deal with their unwillingness to tolerate its presence. The script now says, as chance would have it, an army of furious dwarves appeared out of nowhere. Led by the mine superintendent, they were coming to the rescue of the pitiful elves. A certain somebody wants to make this mission particularly difficult for themselves. Contrary to my advice, the stubborn-as-a-mule evil had still not eliminated the dwarves, and now faced a dwarven army under the leadership of the mine superintendent. Really classy move, oh challenged evil. And so the minions of the brutish evil clubbed the mine superintendent to a pulp. The gifted interior designer evil then turned the mine superintendent into a doormat for the mine entrance. Such a bloody dwarf welcome mat looked just amazing. Now, the time had come to crush those fragile elves.
I never thought that I would die side by side with an elf,
the mine superintendent said with feeling. And a particularly delicate elf replied, "How about side by side with a friend?" "Why don't you just get a room?" answered the irritated evil. The servants of the chaotic evil had discovered a way to the surface. Apparently this came out quite close to the tree of life. Time to trim the bonsai. The servants of the chaotic evil had discovered a gate to the surface that appeared to lead to the unicorn family. This was the opportunity for the chaotic evil to eliminate a few childhood traumas relating to My Little Unicorn. Dwarves usually had better organizational structures than the Prussian army. Individual dwarves would not work without a mine superintendent present. The bureaucracy-hating evil would take out the superintendent. That would plunge the dwarves into chaos before the battle for the Elven City, and prevent them from interfering. And so, the incredibly bad evil allowed itself to be led around by the nose by a bunch of mere elves. Really? You're losing against elves? Elves? They're almost the dodos of the fantasy realm. The massive gates of Tipsy Town towered over the city. They were considered indestructible, mainly because no one could click on them at all. There would be no way past these. A passageway had been opened up through the dying trees, leading directly to Tipsy Town. The Flaming Legion advanced towards the city. Hopefully, there wouldn't be any magicians showing up at the last minute with an elven army. The dying wood had revealed a path to Tipsy Town. The Flaming Legion advanced. Sauron, the chaotic evil, would be proud of them. Well, that's what they thought anyway. The magnificent city of Tipsy Town, in the depths of the forest of Funhorn, was inhabited and guarded by brave elves. The gates to the city were considered impregnable. Never before had this city been defeated, until now. Underground, the demonic servants of the chaotic evil were preparing for an attack. A direct attack had been ruled out, but there were other areas in the forest that could be of use. In a clearing deep in the forest of Funhorn, a unicorn family was prancing around in the sunshine. Their repulsively good presence was already creating blisters on the chaotic evil's tongue. Their death would not only spread joy throughout the dungeon, but such an inspiringly vicious act might also drive the creatures on to achieving greater things. In another small clearing stood the Tree of Life. It was rumored that its life and death were closely linked to that of the forest. This could create opportunities. But apart from the city, nothing else was accessible at this time. The chaotic evil would have to get its servants to find other means of access before it could turn its attention to the unicorns or the Tree of Life. The busy workers of the Flaming Legion had discovered a lot of disturbing evidence that there were dwarves nearby. Of course, this wasn't really possible, since the whole point of this was to lay siege to the elven city, so the chaotic evil ignored this bit of information. The chaotic evil got its first glimpse of the Tree of Life, and was relieved to see that it was not a 140-minute film about a grieving husband, but an actual tree. Woody growths are much easier to wipe off the face of the earth than media products. The Tree of Life was still sending out green shoots and flowering away peacefully. The chaotic evil apparently had better things to do. The chaotic evil had still not destroyed the Tree of Life. It probably could not see the tree for the woods. The Tree of Life was still standing there untouched. The chaotic evil was probably keener to pass the time of day learning sayings off by heart, such as, "Nothing outlasts the love of a tree." The chaotic evil managed to destroy the Tree of Life, in stark contrast to his buddy Archimon, who was defeated by a few balls of light. Weakling. When the Tree of Life died, the forest surrounding it died as well. New, unexpected pathways were revealed through the dying trees. Perhaps the Flaming Legion would be able to access the city this way. Oh yes, and a nice side effect was that this evil deed inspired the chaotic evil's creatures afresh. The evil immediately set about upgrading the throne room.
There they are, and they're mine, all mine, they belong to me.
Of course, they belong to the chaotic evil. The unicorns belong to the chaotic evil now, and they didn't even have to be driven into the sea for satisfaction to be obtained. A quick beating would be plenty. The chaotic evil had not yet succeeded in defeating the unicorn. What was all this evil magic good for, if one couldn't even kill a unicorn with it? The unicorn still looked exactly the same as when it had come into the world. The chaotic evil should get moving now and finally finish it off. Listen, I'm starting to run out of film quotes here. Will you kindly get rid of the unicorns? Like now? The last unicorn went down, and the red ball ran close behind them and erased any trace of them. Oh, sorry. I've somehow strayed a bit off script there. The chaotic evil and its Flaming Legion had destroyed the unicorns. This act of evilness would be hard to beat, and inspired the Legion. They soon presented plans for new and better rooms. The chaotic evil hurriedly began to improve its throne room so it could take advantage of them. Tipsy Town had been destroyed. The Flaming Legion of the chaotic evil had triumphed. The wail of the elves could be heard for absolutely miles. A good day. Once upon a time there was a kingdom full of flowers and rainbows, where the sun shone all the time and there was loads of that goody-goody, lovey-dovey good people stuff going on. There The alliance of abominably good people lived in unearned wealth and prosperity. But there was a path leading to a different place there. At the end of this path was a rock. There was a cave carved in this rock in which the absolute evil lived. It wasn't a grubby, damp cave smelling of muck and mildew, but a deep, dark dungeon, so dark that even darkness itself was afraid of it. It was home to numerous innocent monsters, who enjoyed a happy, contented existence, living in complete harmony with their environment. But time and again, the sickening, sweet-smelling good visited this underworld in search of treasure and experience points. Many monsters found this to be the death of them, but much worse, the absolute evil's treasures were being stolen. One day, just as a few more heroes had finished plundering its dungeon, the absolute evil decided it had had enough, and decided to do something new, something quite monstrous. Go to the surface. The Alliance tried to resist, but the approaching horde just flowed over them like an angry wave of axes, teeth, and bad breath. After numerous unrelenting battles, the absolute evil finally stood before the Alliance's capital, King's Ending. With a hoarse "Oh!" Krotos fell to the ground. The horde had triumphed, and the end of the Alliance had been sealed. The ultimate evil was the sole ruler of the overworld, and its inhabitants would moan under its dictatorship. Everything was exactly as the ultimate evil had always dreamed. Well, not exactly. Out there lurked another part of itself, the chaotic evil with its flaming legion of demons. It would hardly give in without a fight. But the greatest danger, which neither yet suspected, arose in the north, on the other side of the wall. The last remaining heroes of the country joined forces and cast a powerful banishment spell. The absolute evil disappeared from sight with a threatening gesture, and a faint whispered, "I'll be back," could be heard coming from its lips. The absolute evil had been banished, and its essence shattered into several pieces. Its reign of terror had ended. The good people of the overworld rejoiced, and an era of peace began for the Alliance. The evil creatures were driven back into the underground, doomed to serve as cannon fodder for pleasure-seeking adventurers. Meanwhile, secreted away in the world's most inaccessible places, the last remains of the absolute evil were resting, never again to see the light of the overworld. Until today, that is. Somewhere deep under the earth, the ultimate evil awoke. A room full of buried creatures has been unearthed. These joined the ultimate evil. Some creatures had been hiding in a secret room. They joined the ultimate evil. Your throne room is under attack. Defend the throne room. The throne room is under attack. Your creatures are fighting in the dungeon. Your creatures are being attacked in the dungeon. There is fighting in your dungeon. Your creatures are being attacked. Your creatures are currently fighting. A creature has become livid with rage. One of your creatures has become livid with rage. One of your creatures is livid with rage and is running amok. A room with demons has been unearthed. A secret room full of demons was discovered. A new creature has been summoned. A new creature has entered your dungeon through the portal. You have summoned a new creature. The great evil's pathetic creatures slowly became worried. It hadn't been active in a long time. Apparently, it was occupied with more important things, like painting its nails, for example, or learning to play banjo, or reading a good book, or playing Tropico 5, or cutting its toenails, or looking after its personal hygiene, or memorizing a poem.
Enemies have dug their way into your dungeon. Your dungeon has been dug into. Your dungeon has been dug into by enemies.
Duty calls. My cousin is out there fighting the horde, and what do I get? God, duty. It's been so long since I killed an orc, my sword arm's gotten flabby. I used to be the top soldier. Then I took a sword to the chest. Farmers, farriers, stable boys, these are no soldiers. Most have seen too many winters, or too few. I used to be a scientist, but then I got a hammer to the skull. I was once a tax collector, but then I got a pitchfork up the arse.
I used to be an adventurer, but then I got an arrow to the arse.
Enemies have entered the dungeon. There are enemies in your dungeon. Heroes have entered your dungeon. The ultimate evil has discovered a buried room with a few heroes inside. Whoops. The ultimate evil has discovered a room with a few heroes in the underground. Whatever were they doing in there? A room with heroes has been unearthed. An old guard room with heroes has been unearthed. A room with horde creatures in it has been unearthed. A secret room full of horde creatures has been discovered. You have hired a new creature. A new creature has been hired. A new creature has joined your cause. A horrified expression crossed the ultimate evil's face when it discovered that all the chickens from its chicken farm had been eaten. What were its creatures going to eat now? Wait a moment. Chickens? Oh, whoops, that's another game. Got confused. A strange odor spread through the ultimate evil's dungeon. It vowed that in the future it would eat fewer beans. In the meantime, several carnivorous penguins had begun to make their way to the ultimate evil's dungeon. They would arrive eventually, but definitely not before this story has ended. Of late, one of the creatures had come up with a plan to create a trade union and go on strike for better working conditions. Once he remembered exactly what the ultimate evil would do to him, the idea was quickly shelved. A few creatures of the ultimate evil had lit a fire in the dungeon and begun to barbecue. The smell of freshly roasted meat wafted through the underground. The dungeon of the ultimate evil was full of gelatinous cubes. Invisible gelatinous cubes. The creatures of the ultimate evil suddenly developed a craving for chocolate. Chocolate. Apologies, but a narrator has got to earn a living too, so we interrupt this game for a short commercial message. Buy games from Calypso. Lots of games. Thank you. End of commercial. Is this all a bit slow for you? Visit the premium shop, where you can buy 20 gems for just $100, which will speed up the rate at which this work is done. Hang on a minute. This isn't a free-to-play game. Just completely ignore what I just said. Insert funny line here. Wait, what? The script doesn't seem to be done here. Amateurs. Oh, to work with professionals for once. Your dungeon is full of yogurt. Yogurt? What's this all about? There's absolutely no yogurt. Oh, it's supposed to be a funny illusion, I see. Very funny. And the weather for today, cloudy with a chance of bloodthirsty orcs. A little snot is secretly making jokes about the ultimate evil behind its back. You should punish it. But I forgot which one it was. They just all look the same. A Secret Service spy approached you wanting to have the usage data on all your monsters. Unfortunately, there's not a lot left of him after your orcs chewed his... Oh, I can't read that. In a survey of 1,022 heroes, your dungeon ranked number 5 of the most popular destinations for power gamers. Not bad. Not bad. Your dungeon is being attacked... Oh, oops. Got a bit ahead of myself there. Tension's all gone, don't worry. Everything's fine. You don't have to build any further defenses. After a little personal tasting session, you'll be pleased to hear that the beer in your breweries is not too bad at all. Did you know that Realm Forge Studios has brought out some other successful games? You should at least buy and play Dungeons and Seville. Talk about pathetic, surreptitious advertising. Enough to make you vomit.
A super-hip, ultra-modern consultant had approached the corrupting evil in an attempt to convince it that PC games were dead and only browser and mobile games were of any interest anymore. The corrupting evil's ghouls didn't leave any leftovers.
A room with mana crystals has been excavated. The ultimate evil has stumbled upon a room full of mana crystals. The ultimate evil has discovered a secret mana supply. You do not have enough beer. One of your creatures is thirsty and cannot find a beer. Your beer supply is exhausted. You do not have enough gold. Not enough gold. There is not enough gold in your treasury. You cannot pay your creatures. Your creatures cannot collect their pay. You do not have enough gold to pay your creatures. You do not have enough mana. Not enough mana. You do not have enough materials. Not enough materials. Payday. It's payday.
Work, work. Beautiful day today. Oh, I need to till my fields.
Help! Help! I'm being repressed!
I am a peasant, and this is the longest day of my life. No matter how good you are at something, there's always about 1,000,000 people better than you. And what do we learn from this? Never try.
I have 3 kids and no money. Why can't I have no kids and free money?
A rat's nest has been unearthed. The ultimate evil has discovered a rat's nest. A room full of rats has been unearthed. Enemies are attacking your dungeon. Enemies are breaking things in the dungeon. Uh-oh. A spider's nest has been unearthed. Hopefully no one has arachnophobia. A spider nest has been discovered. Spiders have spread throughout the underground. There are countless spiders pouring out of a room that was accidentally unearthed. Disgusting. A room with treasure was unearthed. The ultimate evil has stumbled upon a room full of gold. The ultimate evil has discovered a secret stash of gold.
Your undead creatures have no final resting place. Your creatures require more space for the final resting place. You do not have enough space in the final resting place. You have resurrected a new creature. You resurrected an undead creature. A new undead creature has dug its way from its grave into your dungeon.
A room filled with undead was unearthed. A secret room full of undead has been discovered. Ha! This is one way sign that won't be pointing the way to anyone anymore. Onwards, Horde! Unfortunately, without the associated machine, the room still wasn't operational. The confused evil berated itself for its tardiness and quickly set about fixing the problem. The first of suicidal evil's creatures ventured to the surface, but they were still a far cry from being what you could call a robust, capable army. In the event of any threat, the popular French military tactic would be best employed. Run away and hide. Job done. The trap was finished and ready to be found by a hero. This is going to be so much fun. Job done, trap built, and... Wait, no, that's totally wrong. The trap is meant to be placed on the marked spot. Okay, once again, slowly, from the start. Just at that moment, a particularly powerful dwarf warrior appeared in the dungeon. How had he suddenly arrived at this precise time was indeed most odd, but his presence was more than welcome. He was going to be a guinea pig for the trap. Despite its massive firepower, the hopeless evil had lost his Gobobot. Really, that should be the end of the story. However, somehow another one of these wonderful creatures miraculously appeared in the vicinity of the Goblin Cave. Hopefully, it would receive a little bit more care and attention than its predecessor. The on-the-ball evil recognized that the warrior princess there was extremely powerful. The goblin assassin would be best advised to avoid any contact with her. The first brewery was completed. Soon beer would be flowing like a river, and an Oktoberfest atmosphere would pervade all. Would the ultimate evil put the beer baron out of business? Ugh, such a duff reference. The goblin leader prostrated himself joyfully before the ultimate evil, and immediately dispatched 2 goblins into its dungeon with a few plans for a new room, a tinkerer's cave. This was built as quickly as possible. A sparkling new creator mat graced the tinkerer's cave of the expansion-hungry evil. A goblin would be able to work well in here, producing toolboxes. A few of these boxes would now be needed in order to invent a trap. The moody evil waited patiently. Right now, the restricted evil was only able to call upon orcs and little snots. But there had been rumors that some goblins were hiding out in a cave somewhere close by. The exploratory evil would be sure to follow this line of inquiry. The strategy guidebook, Dungeons for Dummies, says, Mountains don't always just consist of rocks and stone, but may also include natural as well as artificial caves and rooms. These usually contain treasures and dangers to make digging around underground more exciting. The ultimate evil should never forget to keep a watchful eye on its beer and gold stores. If its creatures can't help themselves whenever they need to, they will get angry. Fast. The ultimate evil slowly made itself cozy underground. Although this was a sensible decision, there was a large and lovely overworld out there, just waiting to be destroyed. A pretty little human village lay spread out before the ultimate evil's eyes. A few excited peasants and some louse-ridden Alliance militia were defending the settlement. Time to die, for one side or the other. A locked door prevented the assassin from progressing. It would have taken a long, long, long time for him to have opened it with sheer brute force using weaponry. Thankfully, he had a suitable skill with which he could deactivate doors, and more importantly, traps. The horde got close enough to the castle gate for it to become very obvious that for the time being no progress could be made via this route. Ah, what a pity.
But, that poor bunny. How could you? I mean...
The vile evil, in a display of ruthlessness, vented its anger on this sweet little bundle of fur.
Tragic.
The pixie buzzed over to eat her meal. The ultimate evil prepared an ambush. One would think the killing a fragile flying being wouldn't be rocket science. But an incredibly incompetent evil had taken far too long in doing so, and had startled a few guards into action. The annoying little pixie had spoken her last healing spell. The crafty-minded evil sculpted a fan from her wings. Now it was time to look for King Robert and ensure his early demise. The steady pounding in the rocks had given rise to overworld rumors of a new dungeon. A group of heroes set out to plunder its riches, and the ultimate evil was already looking forward to this visit. The heroes didn't know what had hit them, as several orcs bore down from nowhere and annihilated them. This group of heroes had plundered their last dungeon, but there would be more. The time to attack appeared to be right. On the surface, in the tavern of a small, miserable village, some adventurers gathered. They were acquiring Dutch courage for their visit to the dungeon by downing several beers. The dungeon had to be destroyed. The horde came across a stray goblin by the roadside, who apparently constituted the sad remains of one of the hunting lodge's attack units. This miserable being joined the army of the powerful evil with a grateful whimper. The fortress could already be made out in the distance. The walls were lined with crossbowmen. A head-on assault would undoubtedly prove suicidal here. Undeterred, and completely ignoring the words of the narrator, Goofy Evil sent its army forwards. The crossbow archers on the walls got themselves ready. The deranged evil's army was wiped out without let or quarter. Tell me, weren't my warnings clear enough? Twice I told you that wouldn't work here. Twice. But no, the almighty player must of course carry on, and then simply lose their entire army. I'll just have to nip out and get a new... Listen to me next time, silly. Some heroes had set up camp before the bridge to the hunting lodge, so they could rest, memorize spells, and do other hero crap like that. Time for a random encounter while they're taking a break.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Your bum is as big as a white-tailed gnu. No, that doesn't work. Roses are red, lilies are white. I love you totally, utterly, and no shite. I can do better. Roses are red, dandelions are yellow. Why don't you write a poem yourself in jello? Brilliant! But could come across in the wrong way. Try again. Roses are red, tulips oft too. Lose some weight from your belly, do. True, but she won't want to hear that. On to the next one. Roses are red and later go brown. Give me your heart, else I'll steal it and your gown. Certainly not bad. Roses are red, Ted Stark is dead. Now pray, please fetch me a piece of bread. No, that would be a spoiler. Roses are red, and I don't have an odor. Hodor, 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 hodor. A bit too monosyllabic, perhaps. Roses are red, weeds are green. If you do not say yes, then I will be mean. It's good to be the king.
The king was accompanied by a pixie who was able to cast powerful healing magic. Any direct attack would be suicidal. Mercifully, the omniscient and helpful narrator was at hand. He pointed out to the impatient evil that the pixie went off from time to time in order to check that all was well, and much more importantly, eat her supper in a little camp to the south. The expansion-driven evil couldn't wait to explore the further possibilities of the Tinkerer's Cave. In particular, a hospital seemed a useful way to cure its ailing units. It set about asking for this to be researched. The first hospital bed had been built. Wounded units could now be healed in the hospital. Little Snots would also be able to bring defeated creatures here, so that they could be nursed back to health. The caring evil had good-naturedly built a hospital for its suffering creatures. It, however, still lacked a hospital bed. Little Snots would then bring any units there that had been injured in the dungeon. The charitable evil had researched the hospital. This would enable its units to quickly recover from their injuries, once it had been built, that is. According to scouts, King Robert spent most of his time strolling around his hunting lodge garden reciting poetry. Soon his poetry would turn into mournful ballads. The vengeful evil thirsted to defeat the Alliance's king and mount his head on the wall as a trophy. Whoops, of course, I really mean that he wanted to take all of King Robert's cookies away. Better play it safe, or the age classification folks will be after me. Before that, however, the ultimate evil had to do a bit of work on the dungeon. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to fund even a small army made up of a few orcs. The warmongering evil had hired the first orc. As ancient wisdom says, violence is a solution, usually the only one. Another orc entered the service of the military-savvy evil. The horde was growing and prospering. A Gobobot was being forced to make miserable repairs in the lodge. A brief feeling of what it thought might be sympathy passed through the sensitive evil, but this actually turned out to be a mighty belch. Naturally, it would free the useful Gobobot anyway. As cowardly as the goblins were, their creativity more than made up for this. They proudly presented the treacherous evil with their plan for a devious trap. With a silent, evil cackle, it quickly buckled down to setting the trap. The technically well-versed with traps evil, of course, got the trap placed near the entrance. Anywhere else would be utterly absurd. A few hard slaps were enough to motivate the leader of the goblins to help the ultimate evil. As it transpired, there was an old tunnel which had been previously used as an escape route. This connected the Goblin Cave with the vaults of the hunting lodge. The goblin leader voluntarily made a goblin assassin available to the hard-hitting evil to help infiltrate the lodge. And so the negligent evil promptly allowed the only really vital unit to this mission to die. The goblin leader sighed and put his second-best assassin at evil's disposal. Oh, come on! Really? That assassin can make himself invisible! Invisible! And you let him just die? How did you manage that? Off you go, ask the goblin leader for another one, and this time take care of him. And so the negligent evil promptly allowed the only really vital unit to this mission to die. The goblin leader sighed and put his second-best assassin at evil's disposal at the basement exit. Good God, can we please stop letting mission-critical units die? Not that I've got any sympathy for those worms, but it's really beginning to hold things up here. Collect another assassin from the basement exit. The cheerful evil was pleased with this support. An assassin was a decent melee fighter, but its actual strength lay in its ability to make itself invisible. This was, of course, tested out immediately. Despite the powerful invisibility skill, it was advisable for the ultimate evil to be cautious. Some opponents had such highly trained observation skills that they were actually able to see invisible units. Even this strong dwarf warrior didn't stand a chance against the treacherous traps and powerful monsters of the invincible evil. He bit the dust. So much for a game of dwarves. It did take a while, but the horde eventually set out to talk to the leader of the goblins again. Although I had made myself perfectly clear, someone has persistently refused to follow my story. Instead of handling the whole goblin and castle thing, it seems the one in charge was busy handling something else. I apologize for that last embarrassing allusion, but you should really make your way to the Goblin Cave and talk to their leader now. The dungeon's defences were now clearly much improved, but the hunting lodge still remained well protected and impregnable. There was nothing that the ultimate evil could do. The task was impossible. So the evil withdrew, bent and broken, let feelings of revenge ebb away, and instead took up looking after those cute, teeny-weeny trees. What are they called again? Bonsai, yes, that's it. The end. Pretty unsatisfactory, huh? Of course, that wasn't the end. In reality, the indefatigable evil paid the Goblin Cave another little visit. The goblin leader would hopefully spit out something useful, after a few more slaps. Elated by the assassin's attempt at rescuing it, the Gobobot joined the horde and succeeded in showing its tormentors a real hot time. Its ability to more or less ignore ranged damage and set fire to large areas would come in very handy. The hunting lodge was completely destroyed. The vengeful evil gave itself a very self-satisfied pat on the back. The time was right to concentrate on King Robert. He was in his renowned garden reciting his much less renowned love poems. The lyrically challenged evil had no time for poetry and would soon make this tangibly clear to him. The first treasury was completed. Soon greedy evil's little snots would fill it with gold. You know the golden rule, right? Whoever has the gold makes the rules. The destruction of the small village was the first obvious sign of evil's spread. No human laughter would ever be heard ringing from here again. A delicious rumble announced the fact that the village's last house had crashed to the ground. Ha! There would be no more heroes meeting there to seek out the dungeon of the destruction-hungry evil. The hunting lodge of King Robert lay in the north. It was there that the ultimate evil would finally get its long-awaited revenge. However, it looked pretty damn well guarded. Maybe it should first visit the cave to the west, inhabited by a clan of goblins, where the cunning evil could do a little negotiating. The flames and smoke created by the destruction of the village had by no means escaped the notice of the hunting lodge's inhabitants. Like the good heroes they were, they immediately decided to check things out. Sensible folk would have prepared well, sent out scouts, discussed tactics, that kind of stuff. But we're talking about heroes here, an intellectually rather challenged species, mainly characterized by brutal head-on attacks. King Robert fell, and the ultimate evil had received its well-deserved revenge. But there were still many more heroes out there who deserved to bite the dust. Their time would come. The Tinkerer's Cave was still lying there completely useless. The forgetful evil should place a creator-mat in there soon so that this room can be productive. The Tinkerer's Cave was still not operational due to the lack of a creator-mat. The confused evil berated itself for taking so long and quickly set about fixing the problem. Obviously, the incompetent evil used to be construction manager at Westminster Cathedral because it still hasn't made the Tinkerer's Cave productive. Shift your arse. Construct a creator-mat, you dipstick. It had probably slipped the ultimate evil's mind, but a new room is at its disposal. After it recalled this fact, it immediately set about building the room. Rome was not built in a day, but at least someone got off their lazy arse and made a start, in stark contrast to the Tinkerer's Cave. Actually, building a Tinkerer's Cave was already well overdue, but the mentally challenged evil had long since forgotten all about this again. Instead, it was following a fly's flight path with the greatest of interest and an open mouth. Said fly, whose flight path the whatever evil was so fascinated by, ultimately landed in evil's mouth. A little later, it could be seen buzzing back out through its ear. "Hello? Anyone in there? Build a Tinkerer's Cave, for crying out loud. Surely that's not too much to ask." The Tinkerer's Cave was built. It could, however, only be used as a warehouse, as it lacked the workshop that the insidious evil's goblins needed. Quick as a flash, evil placed a creator-mat in the Tinkerer's Cave. The Tinkerer's Cave still lacked a create-o-mat. The Tinkerer's Cave still lacked a creator-mat. The Tinkerer's Cave still doesn't have a creator-mat. Oh, come on, get on with it, and build the stupid thing. Somewhere in the depths of the dungeon, the ultimate evil awoke. It did not know what had happened, nor why it had awoken, but it longed for revenge. A new hope. It was time. The troops of the absolute evil had driven the Alliance back to their capital, King's Ending. The time for the final battle had arrived. Prepare to destroy the Alliance, and with it all good in the land once and for all. The battle for King's Ending. Troubled by the lack of control it was able to exert over the renegade demons, the ultimate evil travelled north into the Plaguelands. This area was home to the undead, who had eked out an existence there for eons. It was certain they would be eager to join the ultimate evil. The living dead. Far from the Horde, an army of demons had gathered under the leadership of an entity calling itself the Chaotic Evil. This flaming legion slowly moved south, and found itself roaming the Funhorn forests of the elves. There were truly evil deeds to be accomplished there. The battle for the Elven Forest. Once the ultimate evil had escaped from the depths, still fettered to the throne, it travelled to wreak terrible vengeance on those who had done this, heavily supported by its little snots. The first target was Paladin Robert, now King of the Alliance. He had withdrawn to the quiet surroundings of his hunting lodge. There he would be the perfect victim. King Robert has to die. The demigod Krotos, one of the snivelling cowards who had banished the ultimate evil, had just marched his alliance army out of the swamplands to fight the snake-like Nagas. The ultimate evil wanted to teach him the full futility of war by ensuring his untimely passing. Besides, the Nagas could prove to be valuable allies. In the swamplands, although Krotos managed to escape, the horde continued on a glorious triumphal march. Now the time had come to set an example. A deed of particularly heinous evilness would inspire the creatures of the horde to greater things. To this purpose, the horde moved deep into the wealthy heartland of the Alliance. It was on the hunt for a creature whose sugar-sweet kindness and cordiality would rot the tusks of an orc. A unicorn. Occupy Wall Street. The ultimate evil was on the trail of the mage Gandaldor, one of the treacherous heroes who had banished it. Evil had followed him into a craggy valley which was home to some trolls. Here the magician would utter his last spell. Trolls from hell. Job done. Again the ultimate evil's army stood before the gates of King's Ending. The last heroes of the Alliance had gathered here again to ensure good was victorious. But this time it would be different, no matter if evil was spellbound to its throne. King's Ending would fall. Ultimately, however, it was not the horde who stood before King's Ending, but the chaotic evil and its flaming legion. Could these triumph over the Alliance? The battle for King's Ending. With demons? The battle for King's Ending. This time, it's for real. While the Alliance was marching against the horde in the west, the east remained quiet. However, a few demons had fled the fight against the ultimate evil, and so the free city of Bentos was about to experience a somewhat lively day. Another evil awakens. While the ultimate evil was distracted by demons and the undead, the Alliance was able to regroup. The young Joffrey had followed King Robert onto the throne, and was determined to avenge his father's death. To do so, he organized an important political marriage. He invited all the nobles of the kingdom in order to gather their armies into one place. They would launch a major joint strike against the horde. A blood-red wedding. The mighty Naga artifact went up in smoke. The failure of an evil had not protected it well enough. This brought the story to an abrupt end. Wait, that can't be right. Perhaps we should just jump back to an earlier bit in the story and try again. They are attacking the artifact. The artifact is under attack. Protect the artifact. It was time to face Krotos in combat. The ultimate evil positioned its army and went into battle. It was now time to fight Krotos. After a long pause, the unspeakable evil positioned its army and went into battle against him. Okay, just so that we understand each other correctly, you are meant to attack Krotos and finish him off now. One great final battle and all that. All clear? Then off you go. The approaching horde startled a few animals. Dinner. The horde defeated the bears with ease and stocked up on bear meat. However, as bear meat is not actually a resource in the game, this was utterly irrelevant. The first brewery was built underground. Later, orcs and goblins would get obscenely drunk there, and then meander through the dungeons, slurring their words and singing lewd songs.
Well, okay, let's agree it's a draw. Ha! That's only a flesh wound. Oh, that's just a scratch.
The artifact was currently lifeless. It needed some magic. The expanding evil's creature's next task was to expose some mana crystals. This mana would be necessary to charge the artifact up. The artifact was currently lifeless. It needed some magic. The next task for the expanding evil's creatures was to expose some mana crystals. This mana would be necessary to charge the artifact up. Wait a moment, that's already been done. Well, Looks like someone's trying to become the teacher's pet. Nerd. The mana crystals had finally been dug up. Magic crackled in the air. Oh no, wait, that's just the popcorn I'm making. The mana crystals still lay completely untouched. The slow evil really had to act now and dig them up in order to charge up the artifact. The mana crystals had still not been excavated. Things are really not moving forwards here at all. Come on. Good grief, those mana crystals have still not been excavated. I've seen highway road crews work faster than you in your excavations. There was a mysterious shrine underground, which was not yet available. Because something like this spells work for underpaid graphic artists, one can assume that it is likely to come into play at some time or another. Out there, the swamplands look bleak and unfriendly. Not an area Charlie would surf in. The target of the bloodthirsty evil's vengeance was a demigod by the name of Krotos, an extremely goody-goody, good deeds doer. The very mention of his name left anyone from the dark side with a nasty taste in the mouth. From the Dungeons 2 strategy guide. Nagas are ranged units and can detect invisible creatures. There was a strange rock formation in the east of the dungeon. Whatever could it mean? The ultimate evil, or more precisely its creatures, destroyed the Alliance's camp with the greatest of ease. It considered having a luxury hotel for stressed dungeon managers built there. The Nagas kept up their fight to free their unholy temple from the Alliance. A mentally deranged evil had needlessly let the Nagas accompanying it die. In an earlier version of this story, this would have spelled instant defeat. Pragmatically, however, it was decided that the disgraced player would be allowed to carry on with the game. Oh yes, and the Naga were brought back to life again. If the ultimate evil was to help them win it back, then their support would be guaranteed. Since that fitted perfectly with the planned revenge on Krotos, it was the ideal solution. The exploration-keen evil sent its troops to the surface for the first time. The swamplands spread out before them. The next step was to either find the Nagas and recruit them, or be massacred by the army of the Alliance. It was a difficult decision. It looked as if the artifact would fit perfectly into the mysterious altar base that lay deep within the dungeon of the ultimate evil. Maybe it would be a good idea to place it there. The artifact was almost bursting with energy. It was now producing mana independently and ready to stand by the ultimate evil's side in the battle for the temple. It also gave the ultimate evil access to a few more magic spells. Now it was time to take the temple and destroy Krotos. The ultimate evil gathered all the troops together to attack in one devastating wave. Play me the song of magic. Oh yes, the artifact continued to fill itself with more delicious mana. The artifact continued being loaded with magic. It would soon be ready. The creatures of the unstoppable evil continued work on filling the artifact with magic. Slowly, but surely, the artifact filled itself up with magic. The artifact was filled with magic. Neither did it take too long, nor did it go too fast. It was filled up exactly when the level designers intended it to be. Apparently, it had not escaped the notice of the Alliance's magicians that something disturbing was going on in the underground. So they decided to mount powerful attacks on the dungeon. But the ultimate evil had been warned, that's what I'm doing right now, by the way, and created such a formidable defense that it would have brought tears to the eyes of any tower defense player. The wave-by-wave tactics of the Alliance had so far proven unsuccessful. So, a strategic genius had decided to open up a second entrance to the underground in order to send, well, wave after wave of units into the dungeon. Slowly, the artifact filled with powerful mana until finally... Wait a moment. The artifact isn't being charged yet. It's not even on the artifact base. Good grief! Come on, chop chop! We should be much further into the story by now. The artifact had still not been placed into the base provided for it. The ultimate evil immediately grabbed it with the hand of terror to remedy this state of affairs. I don't think you quite got the hang of it yet, have you? You have to take that artifact thingy and put it onto the damn socket. Got that? It's not hard. Pick up, move over, put down. Dead easy. The artifact was still not on its designated podium. The whole thing had taken so long that the narrator was now going to have to go off and shave, as his beard had grown very, very long in the interim. Once the artifact guards were eliminated, the artifact began to glow. It almost seemed to be waiting to be picked up. The artifact was still being guarded by creatures. The slow evil might want to consider taking care of them. Pronto. There were still a few guards merrily dancing around the artifact. These had to be removed. A teensy-weensy hint. These artifact guards are preventing you from continuing. Get rid of them. I don't believe it. Is there really still a guard at the artifact? My goodness, my grandma would have finished the whole game by now. Move your butt. Do something. Pleased Evil's hard-working goblins had made plans for a new room. A guard room. There, creatures could patrol and keep a lookout for heroes. Immediately, the Ultimate Evil got down to having this room researched. The guard room plans were still on ice. The goblins of the Leisurely Evil patiently awaited the time when they could finally start this research. The fingers of a goblin devoted to the unspeakably evil impatiently tapped on the workbench. He was still awaiting orders to begin researching the guard room. Of course, he did it behind the lame Evil's back, as, after all, he didn't want the Hand of Terror to torture him in a most unpleasant way. 100 years later, the dungeon of outdated Evil was discovered by other baddies. Following careful investigation, they came upon the single reason why this dungeon had failed. There was no guard room. Maybe you should work towards preventing this future becoming reality. The guard room was researched and ready for construction. Creatures that were thrown there by the Hand of Terror would keep watch and be especially vigilant for intruders. They were able to alert other creatures near the guard room and summon them for reinforcement as well. King Robert was defeated, but there were more heroes whose life the ultimately vindictive Evil was after. Here in the swamplands, the demigod Krotos was just leading the Alliance's troops against feral Naga clans. They had retreated here after the collapse of the Dark Army. It would seem sensible to first strike an alliance with these Nagas before the impatient Evil squared up against Krotos. A cry for help from a few Nagas trapped in a very remote area reached the Ultimate Evil while it was defending the dungeon. Maybe they could be saved by using a spell, which was ready to be unlocked in the crystal chamber. The Ultimate Evil had learned a spell. This would enable the Nagas to be rescued. It immediately set about doing so. The spell ensured the Nagas' safe passage into the dungeon of the Ultimate Evil. Excellent work. A small group of Alliance troops had gathered here. The presence of the Nagas ensured that the all-seeing Evil could see even the cloaked units. Alliance troops. It appeared that more units had made themselves invisible with the help of magic. The support of a Naga would be needed to detect them. A hospital had been built. From now on, wounded monsters could be cured there. The Nagas opened a portal to the artifact using their ancient magic. The insidious Evil debated briefly whether it was worth the risk. Finally, however, it decided it was only a question of its creatures' lives, and of course, the Ultimate Evil didn't give a toss about them. The Horde had passed through the Naga portal and found themselves in an old altar chamber, in the center of which lay a very ancient-looking object. This had to be the artifact. Some creatures appeared to be guarding it. It wouldn't be long before Krotos was defeated. Just a few more blows and he would fall. Hey, wait, what do you think you're doing? Come back, you coward! I mean, seeing that defeat was inevitable, Krotos opted for a strategic retreat, leaving the temple in the Ultimate Evil's power. The gathered evilness then burst the nearby dam, and the Alliance's camp disappeared under waves of water with a very satisfactory gurgling sound. Despite the soggy end to the Alliance, the Ultimate Evil was livid. It had just been robbed of a delicious revenge. But, if I may be so bold, that was yet to come. I saw it in the script. The army of the Ultimate Evil could view the temple from the top of the hill, and it did indeed not look good for the Nagas. The nauseatingly good hero Krotos personally led the Alliance into battle and was forcing the snake creatures to retreat. Only his death would deliver the temple back into the hands of evil. Well, that could be arranged. The unspeakable Evil's creatures approached the Alliance's camp. An impressive dam towered into the sky in the background. However, this path led to absolutely nowhere. At last, the Horde reached the Naga's camp. They were not able to offer the Ultimate Evil much help. However, they spoke of an artifact that was hidden deep down in the mountain. It would make defeating the Alliance a piece of cake. In the distance, the Ultimate Evil's creatures could see a massive stone building. A Naga temple? Apparently there was an entrance to it in the north. The horde set out in that direction. Together with its Naga allies, the army of the ultimate evil stormed the Naga temple. The battle began. The Alliance had discovered the presence of the ultimate evil. This had nothing to do with a tip-off from a certain narrator who wanted to increase the tension. It was pure coincidence. The good people responded, as you might expect, with a direct attack on the dungeon. The creatures of a suspiciously suicidal evil made their way towards a treacherous ambush. At the last minute, however, they changed their minds. Apologies, I thought that the horde would take a different path, because there is an ambush awaiting them here. But obviously that doesn't seem to be bothering someone at all. The troops of the ultimate evil stumbled upon a patrol of the Alliance that had caught some Nagas. Of course, they immediately set about wiping out the much-hated heroes. But apparently the cowardly evil was intimidated by the ridiculous patrol and hesitated sending its units into battle. A cowardly and pathetic act, in my humble opinion, but no one ever asks for my opinion. Oh, and by the way, you could, of course, also set those Nagas free. The last fighter in the patrol was defeated. Creatures of the horde cheered. Oh, yes, and set the Naga free as well. They were overjoyed to join the ultimate evil. The eager for new units evil sent his creatures further towards where it expected the Naga camp to be. The gold-greedy evil built the first underground treasury, thus laying the foundations for insane amounts of hoarded treasure. But a mana crystal on its own was really of no value to the ultimate evil. It would take a crystal chamber to make this valuable asset usable. A room was quickly installed under the crystal. The crystal chamber shone with all the brilliance of a newly built room. Now a mana fountain just needed to be placed onto the crystal to finally make it usable. Naturally, the frantic evil didn't hesitate a minute before asking for this to be built. The crystal chamber shone with the brilliance of a freshly painted room. To exploit this effectively, the success-enabling evil was now able to recruit Nagas. At this exact moment, the clan conveniently placed some of these snake-like beings at its disposal. And because more is more, pure and simple, the forward-thinking evil engaged in a bit of advanced planning. It built 2 mana fountains instead of just 1. The first mana fountain was built. Time to erect the second one. At last, the second mana fountain was erected. To exploit this effectively, the success-enabling evil was now able to recruit Nagas. At this exact moment, the clan conveniently placed some of these snake-like beings at its disposal. Soon, mana would be mined and taken to the artifact to charge it up. 2 teeny-tiny mana fountains are supposed to be constructed so that the unbelievably boring evil would achieve the next mission target. 2! Only 2! That really shouldn't pose too much of a problem, should it? The 2 mana fountains had still not been erected. It was time that the incredibly slow evil finally pulled its finger out. Hey, you! I know you've just got yourself a little snack, had a bit of a drink, maybe gone to the loo or something. But you have to start building those 2 mana fountains so we can get on with things. Clear? Okay, let's go. The mana crystal was ready. Everyone was looking at the ultimate evil expectantly, wondering if it would now finally build a crystal chamber. It could really only be a matter of moments now. Everyone in the dungeon, including the narrator, was now waiting for a crystal chamber to be built. The devoid of short-term memory evil had completely expunged from its mind that it was time to finally build that damn crystal chamber. I have a wizard, and I'm not afraid to use him. Doesn't make sense? True, but it is a funny quote. So that's how I'm passing the time until you get around to building the crystal chamber. Avada Kedavra! A tinkerer's cave had been built. Soon traps and doors in the dungeon would make any would-be hero's life more tricky. An arena now graced the dungeon of the ever-expanding evil. Here, its creatures could relax after a hard day's work and keep themselves from getting bored. They could also improve their fighting skills by doing a little training. The ultimate evil still had to expand the arena in order to make it really useful. A fighting pit would enable it to improve one of its creatures and train them to be an even better fighter. Exercise equipment would allow its minions to relax and ensure they didn't get bored. One of the creatures found himself in the fighting pit, and somewhat reluctantly, after being convinced via the persuasive power of violence, began training. The ultimate evil had decided how to train the creature, and got the dummy dancing. Or rather, its creature got the dummy dancing. The training dummy, that is.
A fighting pit had been built. The secretive evil immediately grabbed one of its creatures and threw the wretch into it in order to be trained. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But that's exactly what happened.
The generous evil had placed a few bits of training equipment into the arena. These were set to effectively transform the monsters from wobbly jellies into pert, crisp vegetables. Sweaty creatures would have no time to get bored. Mission accomplished. The creature had finished its training and evolved. Smugly, the ultimate evil patted itself on the back. The vicious evil's horde fervently destroyed one of the gold transports and greedily helped themselves to its contents. Another gold transport was stopped by the creatures of the vile evil. Goes without saying that the servants of the ultimate evil intercepted this gold transport as well. Once again, a bank had got into difficulty and shouted loudly for government support. A gold convoy started making its way along Wall Street. Another bank required government help. Immediately, a gold-laden donkey headed out onto Wall Street. Once again, a gold transport was required. A gold transport had reached a distressed bank. The subsequent economic boom immediately attracted a few heroes. Once again, a transport of gold had reached one of the cities and so saved a bank. Another bank had been rescued by lavish government bonds. The evil and heinous acts perpetrated by the ultimate evil left the cities feeling threatened, and they hired extra guards to protect them. The amused evil sniggered as it noticed this. The horde was preparing to attack one of the cities, but the reluctant evil did not feel quite strong enough. The next task was to take care of the unicorn, as this evil deed would help to strengthen its army. Whoops, just realized I skipped a paragraph, sorry. There were 3 upwardly mobile alliance cities in the vicinity. Previously, these had been industrial centers with well-regulated trades. However, in recent years, the banking industry had grown exponentially, and so now all the inhabitants worked for the banking sector. These cities had been networked together via a well-guarded road system, colloquially referred to as Wall Street. Is this really relevant? Don't think so. The cities lay there like ripe fruit, just waiting to be picked. The ultimate evil gathered its creatures in order to address the problem. The cities had still not all been wiped from the face of the overworld. It was time that the lazy evil finally got around to doing something about it. There were still cities waiting to be annihilated by the horde. The tedious evil had still not destroyed all the cities, and by now had exceeded the time frame the developers had designated for this task. This was not going to be helpful for its high score at all. Oh, wait, what? No high scores? Oh, well, just completely ignore that, then. The city by the quarry could not withstand the marauding horde, and became victim to the bloodthirsty warriors. The survivors would be allowed to continue working in the quarry. They'd just be made to do it in chains, to please the insidious evil. The small fishing village offered little resistance against the horde. The thought of getting the fishermen to work for it was quickly rejected by a doubtful evil. It was concerned that the horde would get too used to something so tasty. The city by the forest and its lumber camp held up well, but were not able to tactically outwit the dastardly evil's genius, and so the city was destroyed by the horde. The question now arose whether the horde should start felling trees here, or whether that would enrage the night elves. Hang on, night elves? Oh, wrong game, apologies. Knocking sounds could be heard from somewhere in the underground. That could only mean one thing. There were dwarves hiding somewhere. The courageous evil should tackle them at once. Somewhere in the underground, a cheerful hi-ho, hi-ho could be heard. Obviously there were dwarves living there. The ultimate evil went in search of them. There were still dwarves making mischief somewhere in the underground. This would very soon be put to a stop. The mocking laughter of dwarves could still be heard echoing through the underground. With gritted teeth, the ultimate evil intensified the search. A happy dwarven song extolling the virtues of gold was heard echoing through the corridors. The deaf evil would have found it anyway, thanks to its bustling little snots. Quick action was required before those greedy little rascals started helping themselves to the gold reserves. This area of the overworld housed an old but functional hero's entrance that led into the underground close to the dungeon. The ultimate evil decided to secure it, in order to use it as another secret means of sneaking up to the surface. The final dwarf gasped his last greedy gold before hitting the ground. The underground and the treasures of the hoarding evil were safe, for the time being. The area around the old hero's entrance had been secured. From now on, the vile evil would be able to use this for its own purposes. Royal aid had reached one of the threatened banks in the shape of a gold-laden donkey. A well-functioning financial bubble like that would always be a law not just to bankers, but to heroes as well, looking for somewhere to store the proceeds of their last forays. Once this was done, they marched straight for the nearest dungeon. Unfortunately, that belonged to the ultimate evil, and as dungeons go, would prove a very hard nut to crack. The ultimate evil would not permit any further gold transports to reach a bank in distress. This was in order to prevent the emergence of any more heroes. Have I already mentioned this area's expanding banking sector? Well, as often happens, their speculations went tits up. Thank goodness it was only the kingdom, and not a dragon that had to be approached on bended knees for a loan. The hungry evil was in the mood for horse salami. The time had come to get rid of the unicorn. Greedy people were challenging the mean evil's use of space underground. They would soon learn, in an extremely painful manner, that the evil simply wasn't interested in sharing. The last worker had been expelled from the gold mine. This underground area was now held firmly in the iron grip of the ultimate evil. Well, in the hand of terrors, actually, as evil wasn't so hot at moving around. The gold mine had now been secured. It was time to chase the workers out of the underground. The horde had grown impressively. Many goblins and nagas had joined the military evil's army, but evil was still not satisfied. To evolve any further, a particularly vile act would be needed. There was an enchanting fairy-like being in these lands, whose goodness oozed out through its every pore. The death of the unicorn would inspire the horde to even greater deeds. Moreover, its head would look really nice hung over the fireplace. However, this creature was not only strong, but it possessed an inner magic that could becalm even the most vicious orc and make it change allegiance. Help would be required in order to ensure the horde wasn't transformed into a pathetic heap of flower-gathering hippies. The unicorn was still in the best of health and pranced about the green meadow completely content with life. It was time to put an end to this unspeakably happy frolicking around. The unicorn fell to the ground and was immediately made into horse Wait a minute. That unicorn isn't at all dead yet. It's doing just fine. Come on. Time to take care of it. Still, the cowardly evil wrestled with finally getting down to dealing with the unicorn. Was it fearful of losing too many troops in the battle, or had it secretly developed a soft spot for the beast? The unicorn was still very much alive and kicking. Unless its demise was ensured, this level would drag on endlessly.
Avoid the fratricidal war. Each sliver of a soul exists in its own right.
Him again? Good grief, can't he and his pseudo-mystical babbling go somewhere else? We're trying to tell a story here. The swanky evil's new throne room shone in all its glory. The evil immediately checked out the other rooms, particularly the Tinkerer's Cave, to see what new things its creatures would be able to research now. The creatures of the ultimate evil entered the Orc Cave, referred to as DF9, with trepidation. Due to the greed of its owners, this ambitious building project had never quite been finished. However, there was bound to be something here that would prove useful in defeating the unicorn. At least, that's what the strategy guide kept saying. An orc emerged from the darkness, muttering, "Right, show me what you've got then." He started attacking the creatures of the ultimate evil. After a tough battle, the mysterious orc was slain. What was all that about? But wait. Suddenly the corpse of the orc began to disintegrate. At the same time, something could be seen moving by that strange altar in the Orc Cave. Was that his spirit floating in the air over there? After a few seconds, the strange altar appeared to set the orc free. It would seem he had risen from the dead.
He now happily joined the horde, having ensured their fighting skills were up to scratch. This strange altar was impressive. Perhaps the ultimate evil would soon be able to build something like this in its own dungeon, once it had inspired its monsters through an act of evil. The orc captain hit the ground like a mackerel without a parachute, in the one spot where it was absolutely vital. Thank the Lord that there was that strange altar in the orc cave, which was quick to bring it back to life again.
To quote from Secret Dungeons 2 Diary, an orc chieftain is a support unit which can render allied units immune against enchantments. That's important in this stupid level, as it's all about the unicorn. Without him, the level will be impossible. Apart from that, he can do lots of other cool stuff, but the player will kindly just have to go work that out for themselves. The entrance to the old orc cave was in this area of the overworld. The ultimate evil instructed its creatures to enter it. They were to look for something useful to fight the unicorn. There was still that old orc cave, which may turn out not to be quite so empty. The ultimate evil would be well advised to take a look around it. That orc cave had still not been investigated by the creatures of the ultimate evil. It was clear that something important that needed to be found was hidden there. The procrastinating evil had still not taken a look at the orc cave, and therefore had had no chance so far of being able to defeat the unicorn. Maybe the time had finally come to investigate this cave. Rumor had it there was an ancient cave here, once inhabited by orcs. Perhaps the ultimate evil would find some answers there. Mission accomplished. The unicorn graced the ultimate evil's mantelpiece. The cities lay in ruins, and Wall Street was occupied. 99% of the mission objectives had been completed. Wait, no, it's 100%. Excellent! The ultimate evil's little snots had torn down a wall, just as they had done 1,000 times before. However, as this one collapsed, it revealed a large cave, inhabited by several fat and particularly obnoxious spiders. This plague had to be stopped as quickly as possible, otherwise these disgusting creatures would spread through the underground like lightning. The creatures of the ultimate evil had discovered an entrance to the underground from the surface. It would be wise to secure this area, so they would be able to use this entrance themselves. The unbelievably evil destroyed all the spiders with almost absurd ease, and thereby discovered a resource for cheap leather shoes. It also discovered another path to the surface, which would come in very useful in the future. The ultimate evil's creatures occupied the region with the greatest of ease, and so made the entrance to the underground accessible. The power of that evil deed had made new research items available in the Tinkerer's Cave. New research was available in the Tinkerer's Cave, in particular, a new room. The ambling evil had still not researched the arena. This was an extremely important room for the army's striking power. Inexcusable. The ultimate evil's arena was imposing, impressive, charming, and pure fiction. In fact, this new room had not even been researched in the Tinkerer's Cave yet. How on earth is this game ever going to come to an end?
The strange altar was finally researched and ready to be built. Soon, any creatures who were stupid enough to die in the overworld could be brought back to life. That is, if it were desirable to do so. The strange altar in the old orc cave was fascinating. With the new and improved throne room and a little brain power, it would presumably not be beyond the wit of the ultimate evil to build one in its own dungeon. There it could be made available to all its creatures.
Legend had it that there was a huge spider's nest somewhere in the underground, which had an exit to the surface. The ultimate evil had its little snots go look for it. Somewhere in the underground there was rumored to be a cave full of spiders, guarding an exit to the surface. The questionable evil had still not found the spider's cave. Out of frustration, it slapped the creatures, or at least thought about it. The spider's cave in the east of the dungeon had still not been discovered. The question was, for how much longer, now that a certain narrator had given away its position?
It was time for the ultimate evil to throw one of its creatures into the fighting pit in order for them to be trained.
It would still be a great idea for the dim-witted evil to finally get around to training one of its creatures. that driving me into an incandescent rage evil has still not managed to get one of its creatures trained. Come on, move your ass, you ass. The flatulent evil decided against training its creatures and thus establishing a powerful army, preferring instead to experiment with pushing 2 fingers up its nostrils, shoving them as far as they would possibly go. Nailed it. The Horde's bloodthirsty monsters killed the disgustingly fluffy unicorn on behalf of the ensconced evil. For the troops this meant only one thing: horse salami. But wait, that's not all. This evil deed completely delighted the Horde and inspired it to new evil deeds. The ultimate evil was now able to get its servants to upgrade the throne room. This would give access to more fabulously diabolical things. The fluffy pink unicorn radiated a soothing atmosphere all around that brought all enemies in the area under its spell and thus on its side. From now on, these formerly evil creatures would spend their time picking flowers and hugging trees. Suddenly, the creatures of the abominable evil itched all over and started scratching their bodies. This was bound to have been caused by the presence of the nauseatingly good unicorn rubbing off on them. The ultimate evil returned to its throne room at once and had it upgraded immediately. The creatures of the research-hungry evil had discovered a chaos forge. Here trolls created powerful improvements for the entire Horde. Something like that would do nicely in its own dungeon. It was obvious that magic was protecting Gandaldor against any attacks. It would be impossible for the ultimate evil to find out that it had to destroy the crystals in his residence in order to break the spell. Gandaldor was protected by an aura. The ultimate evil did not know that this aura drew its strength from the crystals in Gandaldor's home. The ultimate evil still had no idea that it had to destroy the crystals in Gandaldor's home to make him vulnerable. The Alliance and the demons continued to unashamedly bash each other's brains out. It would be a really good chance to do something wild, like, for instance, destroying the Alliance camp. While the Alliance and the demons battled each other, the bored evil sat back watching with interest and some popcorn. What a great opportunity to finally destroy the Alliance's camp, but it's important not to rush these things. The Alliance and the demons were still fighting each other, while the mindless evil steadfastly refused to take advantage of the situation. Apparently, the evil was not aware that this was the next mission goal to be accomplished. It goes without saying that the renegade demons and the Alliance were not the best of friends. Thus, another portal quite near to the camp opened, and demons started pouring out of it. Very soon a fierce battle raged between the two camps. This could be a good opportunity to have the last laugh. Why not use the opportunity to wipe out the weakened Alliance, if I may be so bold? The creatures of the ultimate evil came upon a strange portal. The evil immediately recognized it for what it was, the entrance to the demon realm. Could this be used to bring the demons under evil's control? The glowering creatures surrounding the area did not appear to share this wish. They seemed more interested in a game of rough and tumble. When the demons persistently refused to subjugate themselves to the vile evil, the Horde promptly stormed them. The portal disappeared, but it would certainly not be the only one. What did the demons' presence here mean? The ultimate evil let its creatures continue to push on to where the clan chiefs resided. The hesitant evil had still not conquered the area around the demon portal. As it was clear that this was an important step in the mission, story, it therefore needed to be done post-haste. The Troll's dungeon did not make a good first impression, and was clearly under some demonic influence. Nevertheless, the Horde continued fearlessly into the underground. It was more than a curious question as to what the demons here were all about. What was their motivation? And why had Gandaldor allied himself with them? The troops of the ultimate evil continued searching through the Troll's dungeon. What terrible secrets would they uncover? The Trolls smashed the demonic crystal to pieces with their enormous rocks, and so put an end to the aura. The Horde was once again on the march. The time had come to destroy the demonic crystal using a troll rock thrower. A plateau allowed the displeased evil's creatures to see the unnatural pulsating of a demonic crystal. This crystal was located on the surface and could not be reached without anyone succumbing to its power. Fortunately, the mission plan following evil had just recently recruited the troll rock throwers. This kind of unit could dig in and then attack the crystal from the plateau. The unspeakable evil's creatures saw Trollolo and Groom in the distance. However, their glowing red eyes did not bode well. They appeared to be under a spell, an energy aura wobbling around them somewhat disturbingly. To make matters worse, the hero-magician Gandaldor happened to appear at this moment too. After all, a magician never arrives too late or too soon, but always precisely when he means to.
Defend this place, my minions, for true evil. The Horde will not be a problem for my master.
With these unpleasing words, magic portals opened in the disgruntled evil's dungeon to release sinister demons into its realm. Brace yourself. Trollolo is one of your most able warlords. They were on the cusp of publishing the story of his career, but that idea got ditched. This Trollolo is so well known that a plan is afoot to make a movie about his life. But hey, let's face it, the development stage for that has been almost as long as a certain Duke needed to use up his chewing gum reserves. The ultimate evil had for some time been plotting what to do with the unfortunate magician Gandaldor, should it happen to get hold of him. But Gandaldor would be prepared. He had long predicted the return of the Dark Lord, the ultimate evil. Whenever he wasn't off with some legendary heroes or other, the magician Gandaldor ran the famous wizard's academy, Snotfarts, or was busy fighting the Balrogs. Just saying. Gandaldor was on his way back from Fireguard. A couple of hobbits had been taken there. Oh, God, now I have that song in my head. Did I mention how well-known Trollolo is? Yes, of course I did. Now, this groom wasn't half as famous. However, you may have heard of his son, Garfrog. But if that doesn't ring any bells, don't worry. Who cares about World of Fightcraft these days anyway? Gandaldor? I thought he was already dead. Wasn't he killed by that evil sorcerer, Malfrog? Some confused creatures decided to go up against the horde of the ultimate evil. However, the moment was short-lived and their fate sealed. The creatures of the keeping itself at a safe distance evil entered the clan chief's dungeon. However, something was very wrong. The demonic influence was palpable. Slowly they groped their way forwards, penetrating further into the darkness, following the relentless clicks of the ultimate evil.
You'll pay for that. The one true evil will not be stopped.
Unfortunately, the demon's crystal had failed to provide access to certain areas of the overworld. The ever-exploratory evil then saw that the hero's camp in the overworld happened to be conveniently close to the crystal. This might just prove useful. It was time to clean up the camp. Apparently, it wasn't just the clan chiefs who had fallen victim to the demonic aura, but their troops as well. The ultimate evil made its way into their dungeon in order to drum up more supporters for its battle. The troll chieftain Groom died a heroic death. At least, that's what will be written in the history books. Probably best not to mention his addiction to demon blood. The Alliance camp went up in smoke and flames. The unspeakable evil's creatures shouted and roared their victory to all and sundry. It would take some time before it dawned on them that they could have feasted royally from the contents of the Alliance's stores. The unspeakable evil's creatures came across some Alliance troops near the entrance to the dungeon. They had set up a cozy-looking camp here and were having a picnic. The Alliance camp lasted about as long as a flock of sheep at an orc family reunion. As a bonus, so to speak, a plateau appeared very close to the demonic crystal. Perhaps a troll rock thrower could be useful here. Scouts of the interested in exploration evil came upon a well-guarded Alliance camp in the overworld. Unfortunately, these happened to notice the Horde's presence, and therefore began to attack the dungeon. There was a small, very well-guarded Alliance camp in the overworld that had now noticed the Horde. Unfortunately, this camp was already connected to the dungeon, so that very soon wave upon wave of heroes would start streaming into the dungeon. The Alliance camp went up in flames. An inner voice as well as the mission display informed the ultimate evil that there were no other camps in the area. The Horde discovered another Alliance camp. Go get 'em! That's what the ultimate evil's creatures might say in that kind of situation. Trolls, renowned for their striking power, inhabited this land. The ultimate evil had sent off Trollolo, one of its Orc clan chiefs, to invite the trolls to join the horde. At the same time, the vengeful evil was on the hunt for the good magician Gandaldor. He was thought to be in the area, and had been one of the heroes who had banished the evil. Not that the revenge-thirsty evil needed any reason for hunting down good-natured beings. First priority, however, was to meet with the clan chief. Everything else could be dealt with later.
The one true evil will burn you. My life for the one true evil. You cannot win, you upstart. You are a complete and utter fraud. True evil will prevail. Welcome. You who are about to die, we salute you. For you will die here. For horror. For the one true evil.
Gandaldor hit the ground. The horde had triumphed. Quite naturally, even a demonically possessed magician was absolutely no match for the ultimate evil. Nevertheless, Gandaldor's words were significant, because he really was convinced that he was serving the one true evil. Apparently, there was competition out there. The remaining demons fled from the victorious horde in droves via brand-new demon portals that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Where would they go? All would be revealed at a future date. At least their master had been destroyed. After a few mining operations in the dungeon, the ultimate evil's little snots broke through a wall into a large room. An evil-looking crystal lay pulsating in the middle of it. This had to be the source of the demonic aura. The destruction of the demons and the hellish crystal meant that the barrier was destroyed too. The self-satisfied evil allowed itself a quick pat on the back. Now it was time to deal with Trollolo and Groom. The second demonic crystal was destroyed by the horde, and with its demise an area in the overworld was set free. This caused another entrance from the clan chief's dungeon to the overworld to open, thereby providing the horde with a speedy means of travel. The crystal in the clan chief's dungeon had still not been destroyed and enjoyed the best of health. Its continued presence meant there could be no advancement for the horde. In the former clan chief's dungeon, the unspeakable evil stumbled upon another demonic crystal, one which projected its insidious aura onto the surface. It was clear that this thing would have to be destroyed as well. The source of the demonic aura in the underground had still not been discovered. Of course, it would have been pure chance to stumble on it. At least it would have been, had there been no hints as to where to find it. But in fact, it was very clearly highlighted on the map. Ooh, I guess I kind of ruined the sense of immersion there, didn't I? The source of the demonic aura had to lie somewhere in the underground. The bustling evil instructed the little snots to dig the underground for all they were worth, and to leave no stone unturned until its source was found. The uneasy evil's little snots had been digging when they came upon a strange room, which was heavily guarded. An inner voice told the evil that it should keep its nose out of there until the appropriate mission objective had been given. A group of vicious demons were guarding the area. Since neither Buffy nor the Winchester brothers were currently available to sort them out, for better or for worse, it would have to be up to the Horde or the delegating evil to get the job done. The ultimate evil had still not discovered the source of the demonic aura. Tirelessly, it hounded the little snots to at long last trace its origins. The source of the demonic aura had still not been found. The little snots continued to work at finding it. They are, aren't they? The source of the demonic aura was still an utter mystery. It wouldn't have anything to do with that highly visible icon on the mini-map, would it? Who knows? Who knows? When the Horde's creatures reached the clan chiefs Trollolo and Groom, there was no more demonic fire to be seen blazing in their eyes. Both joined the ultimate evil with the greatest glee. The prudent evil resisted the urge to punish them both severely for their treachery, for the time being at any rate. Currently, it needed all the help it could muster. This basically good hero had allied himself with the demons, who were resisting the unspeakable evil's control. That did not bode well, at least not for the ultimate evil. A few more demons had idiotically thrown themselves into an attack on the Horde. There was an entrance leading into the underground behind them. That had to be Gandaldor's hideout. Moreover, the rock throwers were able to free themselves from the spell and didn't hesitate to join the horde.
This will not please my lord. The true evil will tear you apart. Vengeance will be ours.
The voice of the obviously corrupted magician boomed across the battlefield. He seemed to think himself a servant of evil. But he was serving the wrong evil, and the horde would soon teach him that. The path to the clan chief's dungeon appeared to be guarded by some corrupted trolls, who bombarded the gorge incessantly with stones. The well-armed evil would have to take good care of its troops here, or alternatively avoid clever tactics and send them through en masse, as befits a horde. A demon portal in the dungeon has been closed successfully. A demon portal in the dungeon has been closed. And a demon portal was opened in the dungeon. Wait a moment. A demon portal? In the dungeon? Red alert! Another demon portal has opened in the dungeon. A demon portal has appeared in the dungeon. And the mighty Trollolo fell to the ground. As far as the ultimate evil was concerned, he had paid his debt, so his death was only acknowledged with a brief shrug of the shoulders. Some creatures have been held captive here, and after being liberated, were pleased to join the horde. It seemed wise to build a chaos forge in the dungeon. This would strengthen the horde's arms and armor. The research-hungry evil built a chaos forge with the greatest of ease. It would soon be home to trolls, who would begin to upgrade the horde's equipment. It was necessary to erect a workshop in order for the chaos forge to actually be fully functional. The clever evil, of course, set about creating this immediately. The much-needed item had been built in the chaos forge. Now the ultimate evil could request and research malicious equipment improvements to its heart's content. The last house in the upper town of King's Ending had been destroyed. It was now time to put an end to the elemental elemental magette. You know, I really hate writers. Why did they do this to me? Never mind. It was now time to put an end to good old Drool once and for all, permanently. The remaining heroes entrenched and barricaded themselves into King's Ending. It was time to take the battle into the city. The horde stormed the Alliance's capital. Magnificent white houses grace the streets here. Could they defy the vile evil? Probably not. One of the houses just went up in flames. Oh, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. I mean, the creatures of the destruction-mad evil raged uninterrupted through the city, destroying everything that got in their way. A very evil deed indeed. As yet not a single house had been destroyed. Was the thoughtful evil thinking about moving its creatures in here? Well, very doubtful. It was much more likely to be treacherously planning how it could destroy the city most effectively and viciously. The houses of King's Ending stood awaiting their destruction. Come on, break something.
Ha! You have been weighed, you have been measured, and you have absolutely been found wanting. All right, we'll call it a draw. Ha! It's just a flesh wound. Ha! 'Tis but a scratch. Hold your position! Hold your position! Sons of King's Ending, my brothers! I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of the Alliance fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. This day we fight. By all that you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand, men of the Alliance.
With a brilliant and plagiarized speech, the demigod Krotos roused the warriors for the final battle against evil. Here it is, then, the last confrontation between good and evil, the final battle. The impressive finale that probably only 10% of all buyers actually get to see. The epic end to the story, for which several people have worked sleepless nights to complete. So, this is it. Now it was up to the creatures of the snorting with fury evil to exact their final revenge.
Yes!
Wow, you did it! Forget about this talking to you in the third-person crap. You really did it! Incredible! I could hug you, I could kiss you, but hey, I'm just the voice in a video game. Krotos lay on the ground. The absolute evil had triumphed and wreaked its revenge. Now there was only one thing left to do. Watch the somewhat mediocre outro we managed to cobble together just before the deadline. Enjoy. Krotos continued to enjoy the most excellent of health. It was time to do something about that.
I am what the gods have made me. I have not forgotten you. For what you have done, this city will be your grave. A true warrior does not hide. Come on, evil one, leave the underground and face me. Hades awaits. Vile creature, I defeated and banished you once before, I'll do it again.
Grumly, the Dwarven High King, was still in the best of health. It would be wise to do something about it. Grumly, the dwarf, was still not pushing up the daisies. The ultimate evil must not hesitate. The current situation needs to be fixed as quickly as possible. Grumly was still not dead. Slowly, the creatures of the ultimate evil were beginning to doubt its ability to wreak chaos and destruction across the lands. Grumly continued to enjoy the best of health. The creatures of the tentative evil wondered whether or not something would be done about it. Someday. Move. Do something. The destruction of the King's Ending outpost had demoralized the defenders. Grumly, the Dwarf King, could not restrain himself and attacked.
Come on, follow me. Let's drive this dishonorable scum out of our country. Certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
The gates of King's Ending opened. Grumly, the Dwarven High King, lay in the dust. Once again, the insidious evil had won, and had at last completed a further step on its path of revenge.
There's plenty for everyone. May the best dwarf win. I guess that concludes negotiations. Bring your pretty face to my axe. Nobody tosses a dwarf.
Finally, King's Ending, the capital of the Alliance, lay before the ultimate evil. The last remaining heroes had gathered to defend it. Grumly, the Dwarven High King, Guludrul, a powerful elemental warden who always had a song on her lips and a double bass in her luggage, and of course, Krotos, the demigod. Here it was then, the final battle. This is where the revolting evil would finally be able to quench its thirst for revenge. The city would fall, and the heroes with it. King's Ending hadn't been built in a day, but it would fall in one. So, the ultimate evil, Anteportus.
You think that this is the end, but in fact, it is just the beginning.
You again? Hey, if I want to hear esoteric jabbering, I'll go to a natural healer and get my diseases cured with a pendulum. Now, let's get back to the story. We've just got to the bit where you destroyed King's Ending. In the end, the castle was unable to offer much resistance against the hideous evil's creatures. It was defeated. The Horde had triumphed again. As might be expected, the creatures of the strategically savvy evil made short work of the nice, quiet little village that had the misfortune of lying a little too near to the dungeon gate. Its destruction, however, had not gone unnoticed. The thick smoke plumes and the change in the river were a bit of a giveaway. The imminent arrival of a few Alliance troops was to be expected. However, despite the well-planned ambush, the defenders of good could not stop the despicable evil. Yet another outpost of King's Ending was sent up in smoke and flames. A village with an imposing-looking castle towering over it slowly emerged from the fog of war. This was bound to have numerous Alliance defenders entrenched in it. This castle had to fall. There was a nice, quiet little village near the gate to the vengeful evil's dungeon. Here, unsuspecting peasants tilled their fields, and sheep peacefully grazed. Unfortunately, this would not last much longer, because the creatures of the dastardly evil would reduce this land to ashes. Another small camp lay before the creatures of the unspeakable evil. But it was quiet, too quiet. Could this be an ambush? Keeping a safe distance, the unstoppable evil let its minions advance. Suddenly the bells of the castle rang out. All the peasants in the surrounding area fled, not in panic at the wicked evil's creatures, but to the castle, in order to arm themselves to the teeth. An ambush. Suddenly a lion's troops sprung out from their hiding places and attacked the surprised evil's creatures.
It's time to end this once and for all! Defend yourself, scum! You shall not pass!
With an impressive speech, the elemental Magess prepared herself for the final battle. The menacing evil was entirely unimpressed, and sent its henchmen into the fray.
Come, defenders of King's Ending! Let us throw this scum out of our city! This day does not belong to one man, but to all! Let us together rebuild this world that we may share it in the days of peace. Never again will this city fall into enemy hands. For King's Ending!
2 quotes at once? Good grief, my tongue's gone all furry. Anyway, Gudrul, the elemental Magess, appeared in the city in order to protect it and drive the abominable evil out. It was obvious that she didn't understand that the genius evil was the main protagonist of this story, and she only had a bit part. Her demise would give all of us great joy. At last! After a tough battle, the elemental Magess fell to the ground. Her time was over. Now the demigod was all that stood between the forces of evil and success. The elemental Magess continued moving around King's Ending and was giving the Horde significant problems. It's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum. But we're all out of gum.
You have not yet defeated me. Take note, today is not the end. I will return. On that depend. You haven't got a chance. I have passed the test. I will defeat you and remain Guludrul. You are many, but even the smallest person can change the course of the future. The power of evil has ended. The time has come for the dominion of the Alliance. Back into the underground with you.
The Alliance Temple was still standing and continued to prevent the last demon portal from reaching full power. The temple had still not been destroyed. The demon should get a bit of a move on to release the last demon portal in the underground. The Temple of Bentos collapsed with a loud thud. Yes, well, that's what I'd really like to say, but actually the thing is still standing there. Come on, you dreamer. Just trash the damn thing. The square was captured. A huge demon portal opened straight to Oblivion. Wait, no, not Oblivion, somewhere else. Birmingham. We don't want to be sued again. But this portal would not activate on its own. It needed to be charged up. Workers flocked to finish the portal. The chaotic evil had to protect the workers and the portal in order to secure its reinforcements. The city's defenders would never sit idly by and wait for this monstrosity to be completed. At last, the creatures of the chaotic evil arrived and secured the portal. But the other side had used the time well. A large Alliance army had gathered and entrenched themselves here.
Hold your positions, men! No one has ever breached these walls!
Well, it was about time. The chaotic evil put its whole trust into its newest army recruit. In the meantime, a new demon portal opened a little further away. Out of it streamed demons, who unfortunately came face to face with some Alliance guards. The demons of the chaotic evil immediately set out to help them. The chaotic evil's army had still not reached the portal. As already mentioned a long time ago, some poor demons were fighting for their lives there. Unbelievably, the impertinent defenders of Bentos weren't willing to just give up and accept their fate. The demon portal was in its last throes, barely spitting out any demons anymore. It wouldn't be long before it was overrun by the defenders. It seemed as if the army of the chaotic evil would never ever reach that portal. Yes, the same portal that I mentioned a few minutes ago. The one where demons are fighting for their lives. The one that will very soon be dead, gone, no more, an ex-portal. I said the chaotic evil's army secured the square with ease. The large square in the middle of Bentos was still not secured. Somewhat at a loss, the demons looked around, wondering when the attack would start. But the chaotic evil remained silent. At last, the square had been taken. The demons could advance to the other side of the city and— Hang on a minute. The square hasn't been captured at all. What are you doing? Come on, just get on with it! A huge square divided the city of Bentos in two. This area was heavily guarded. Too heavily for the still weak army of the chaotic evil. The demon invasion would probably grind to an inglorious halt here. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course it won't grind to a halt, because just at this moment another portal opened, from which mighty pit fiends emerged. These massive demons wouldn't have any problem storming these defenses. The chaotic evil's army secured the square with ease. This area of the path was heavily guarded. It would be wise for the chaotic evil not to continue down this path and sacrifice its army, but instead find another way through.
I was once an adventurer, looted dungeons, killed monsters, and amassed treasure. But then I took an arrow to the knee, and now I'm just a guard. Don't worry about it too much. Things will get better, you know. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Lemonade? Pah. Let me tell you, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade out of them, throw them back. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemons. What the hell am I supposed to do with these? And he's supposed to be our new king? Well, I didn't vote for him. I've recently stocked up a huge amount of firewood. You know, winter is coming.
Yeah, I'm preparing for an adventure, and I'm looking for someone to join me.
An adventure? No, I don't think anyone in Bentos is particularly interested in adventures. Nasty, troublesome things they are, and they make you late for supper.
Tell me, have you seen my weighted companion cube anywhere?
While the Horde was raging in the west, fighting the Alliance, another evil was rising in the east. It all began in the city of Bentos, one of the free cities whose inhabitants were famed for their fresh breath. But our story begins in the vaults beneath the city, which connected the great temples together. Suddenly, and without warning, a mysterious portal opened.
What the hell?
The guard's exclamation proved not far off, as shortly thereafter a demon hopped through the portal and lunged at the guard.
Red alert! We're being attacked! Man the weapons!
The Templar Knights responded quickly and diligently set to work destroying the incoming demons. At the same time, other such portals began to open in the city. The normal city guards, however, were not as sharp as the religious Brotherhood soldiers. All demons had been defeated. The Alliance had managed to keep Bentos under their control and defeat the attackers. A sorry end, and one that I did not see coming. Perhaps it turned out differently after all. I think I'll just go back a few pages. By a stroke of incredible good luck, the Alliance had managed to destroy the demon portal before it finished charging. The demons had been defeated. Normally, this is the stuff of legend or stories, but this is meant to be a story about evil. Odd. But that's what's written here. A large group of guards had assembled and stood in the way of the demons. To make matters worse, there were some amongst them whose eyes could easily spot invisible beings. The shadow lurkers wouldn't be of much use here. The Temple of Bentos collapsed with a loud crash. The demons had taken the city. The portal in the underground was freed. It was different from the other portals. It was not only a link between the worlds, but also hid its own secret. The chaotic evil. Pit fiends are powerful creatures that are happiest in the midst of battle. They serve primarily as mighty close combat fighters, keeping the enemy away from the weaker demons. Well, at least that's what's written here. Continuing to quote, Pit fiends possess a mighty blow with which they can inflict immense damage to a single enemy. The demon portal was attacked. The demons went all out to fend off the attackers. The demon portal was under attack. The demon portal was gradually being destroyed. The portal was fully charged. Now the army of the chaotic evil could no longer be stopped. A continuous supply of reinforcements flowed out of the portal. Bentos was lost. And now you're thinking with portals too. Very good. There was another portal needing to be freed. This was in the underground and was surrounded by the Templar Knights. Only when their temple had been destroyed would this last portal be ready. the portal on which everything else depended. Unseen by the guards, the shadow lurkers snuck past. Another group, however, had now noticed the portal and were on their way to inspect it. The shadow lurkers had to hurry to eliminate them before they could sabotage the portal. The inattentive guards were no match for the shadow lurkers. Another group, however, had now noticed the portal and were on their way to inspect it. The shadow lurkers had to hurry to eliminate them before they could sabotage the portal.
Bit of a boring day today, eh?
Yeah, say that again. Nothing's happening here at all. I keep on hearing stories from the West. I wish something would happen here, too.
You're right. It's deadly boring here. Join the army, they said. See the world, they said.
Yeah, right. Oh, I'd rather be sailing.
A gang of shadow lurkers hopped out of one of the portals. Very emaciated demons, not exactly known for their intelligence. But it seemed as if a larger and much smarter power was guiding them. It looked like they were being controlled. Quickly, these little creatures made their way to another portal nearby to wait for other demons. Shadow lurkers were only any use as weak and cheap cannon fodder in a fight. They tried to compensate for this using stealth and treachery. Did I tell you that the shadow lurkers made their way to another portal in the close vicinity, or not? Look, just in case you haven't gotten it yet, the greater power that takes control of the shadow lurkers is supposed to be you. We can probably agree to disagree about the smart comment. Now get a move on. Take the creatures and guide them to the next portal. Why spend ages messing around when everything could be solved with brute force? The chaotic evil's thoughts went something along those lines, as it simply had the guards beaten to a pulp, saving the succubus's powers for later. Being sneaky, the chaotic evil did have one of the guards charmed, at which point the guard promptly started to attack his comrades, a magnificent spectacle. A few guards that were loitering in the area were on their way to the nearest portal. This presented a great opportunity for the chaotic evil to try out the enchanting powers of a succubus. The chaotic evil was still hesitating. Should it allow one of the guards to be charmed by a succubus? Or would this problem be better solved in an old-fashioned way? Beads of sweat started trickling from the forehead of the chaotic evil. A decision had to be made, but it could not bring itself to do so. Attack or brute force? That was the question. There was still nothing happening. The guards enjoyed the best of health, and the invasion of the city had come to a halt. Perhaps the chaotic evil was a little too chaotic for this task. The portal was saved, and out flowed enchanting creatures. And enchanting was the word. A succubus, or more accurately, several succubi, poured out of the portal and joined the rest of the demons. They, too, seemed to be guided by a higher power. Let's call it, without anticipating events, the chaotic evil.
Take this and that, you glowing whatever you are.
Feel my blade, you little glowing so-and-so.
Gradually, the guards smashed the portal to smithereens. The higher power controlling the shadow lurkers obviously wasn't even considering taking any action, but was busy having a cozy nap instead. Move yourself! Save the portal now! Then we can get on with the story!
What's that strange little light business? Anyone have any idea?
No, not really. But it looks nice, don't you think? Colour blends perfectly into the cityscape.
Colour in the cityscape? Over my dead body. Nothing happens here without planning permission. Get going. Demolish it.
A few guards attacked the portal. It was time to act quickly and put a stop to them. One of the servants was overwhelmed by the city's defenders. He would be charging no more portals. One servant was killed on the way to the portal by the defenders. A servant, one of the demon's workers, appeared in order to charge up the portal. The chaotic evil protected him religiously from all comers. Another servant appeared to charge the portal. Another servant appeared and had to be protected as he made his way to the portal. A servant was on his way to charge the portal. A servant had reached the portal and charged it with demonic power. Thanks to this, some demons were able to scurry through and join the chaotic evil. Another servant had reached the portal and charged it with demonic force. Another servant had reached the portal. A servant reached the portal and also charged it with demonic power.
The Alliance's major offensive had failed. The repulsive evil's creatures cheered. The ultimate evil thought such behavior way too cheesy. They gave a few of the celebrating little snots a clip round the ear and began the preparations for an attack on the wedding.
King Joffrey and his tiny little wedding castle were still awaiting their destruction. To complete this mission, the ultimate evil had to destroy King Joffrey and his little castle. Apparently, this caused the evil great moral consternation, as the task had still not been completed. "Hey there! Hello? Any chance of you getting on with it? Could you please take out King Joffrey so we can move on? Thank you." The little snots had dug up one of the lost creatures, a mighty orc Ironhide, who, thanks to its incredibly hard armor, could shrug off even the most powerful blows with a yawn. It joyfully rejoined the army of the ultimate evil. The little snots had discovered one of the lost creatures, a mighty troll juggernaut who came with an absurdly high amount of health points and defended itself with strong roundhouse blows. As a certain handsome narrator had already feared, guests of the king were now arriving from several directions simultaneously. The ultimate evil would have to keep a sharp eye out. All the nobles of the Alliance's kingdom had been invited to the wedding of Robert's son Joffrey. If they were to join together to form an army, it would create a force that could even go up against the might of the Horde. Of course, the insidious evil was not planning to simply give up just like that, after all. These nobles had to travel there first, and such trips were notoriously susceptible to all kinds of little accidents. There were several routes that led from various parts of the country up to the castle. The thoughtful evil would have to keep an eye on all of them to take out the advancing nobles in time. Two extremely powerful fighting creatures had joined the ultimate evil, but had been lost in an underground landslide. They were probably still alive, but would need to be dug out. The departing wedding guests left King Joffrey back in the safety of his castle. Yet there were relatively few guards on duty. This was an ideal opportunity for the insidious evil to reunite father and son in the grave. The wedding party was complete. Without further ado, they decided to attack the nearby dungeon in celebration of the occasion. Unfortunately, it was the ultimate evil's dungeon. It chuckled inwardly and got ready for the attackers preparing to roll in. The pixie village was laid to rack and ruin by the Horde. Word of this heartbreakingly evil act quickly spread among the insidious evil's creatures. Elated by such an amoral act of bravura, the little snot started making plans for an even more impressive throne room. The pixie village still stood there gleaming in the sun, instead of having been trashed and leveled by the Horde, a fact that would soon have to be changed. The pixie village was still undestroyed. It stood there, proud and untouched, as if it were mocking the ultimate evil, which it probably was. Say, do you know that the pixie village still hasn't been destroyed? This would make all sorts of exciting new things available to you, and is actually quite key to you completing this level successfully. I just thought I'd mention it, by the by. There was a small village close by, inhabited by tiny creatures, pixies. They were very kind-hearted, cheerful, and friendly. The mere thought of them left a nasty taste in the Gargamelesque evil's mouth. Obliterating these good-hearted creatures from the overworld would drive the esteem in which the ultimate evil was held to new dizzying heights. This, technically speaking, would unlock new research, which could prove to be essential.
A loud rumble announced the release of the log pile, which completely buried the road. No more nobles would be able to arrive along this path.
The creatures of the all-destroying evil demolished the first pillar. Destroying them all would almost certainly cause an avalanche to block the way.
Logs had been piled next to one of the paths. With a nudge, they could be used to block the way.
A drunken group of revelers broke away from the wedding party and started to wander towards the ultimate evil's dungeon, slurring wild threats. The fools would soon regret this profoundly. Ted Stark went down. That was almost as easy as stealing candy from a baby. Curiously, his head almost immediately detached itself from his torso. The disinterested evil, however, just shrugged its shoulders at this. Surprisingly, Ted Stark, the one who wore fur once winter fell, arrived at the castle and immediately joined the throng of revellers. The careless evil was a little ashamed that it had not managed to stop the noble it had so wanted to kill. Oh, look! The first noble is arriving, Ted Stark, the one who wore fur once winter fell and had a death wish. He likes to travel through dangerous terrain without the protection of strong troops. The hateful evil intercepted him before he reached the castle. The eagle-eyed evil easily found and destroyed Waldo Frey. His days of hide-and-seek were over. Waldo Frey had arrived at the castle and joined the wedding party with no problem. Meanwhile, the confused evil was still asking, "Where's Waldo?" Another nobleman was on his way to the new king's wedding. Waldo Frey was known for his racy parties and had an entourage consisting entirely of his own offspring. Although Waldo was a master at hiding, the stubborn evil was not about to let him reach the castle. Jamie Lanchester bit the dust, defeated by the ultimate evil's horde. What would his sister say? Jamie Lee Lanchester arrived at the wedding festivities. Strangely enough, he first of all sought out his beloved sister. Well, he's just one hell of a family man. The arrival of another nobleman was imminent. Jamie Lanchester. Sorry, I read that wrong. His cooking and fighting skills were legendary. The grim-faced evil was not impressed by this at all. As expected, John Tron Snow was no match for the ultimate evil. You know nothing, John Tron Snow. Might be because you're dead now. John Tron Snow arrived at the wedding according to plan. The incompetent evil had not managed to trap him, thereby depriving the narrator of making any funny references, like, for example, "You know nothing, John Tron Snow." Talk about thoughtless. Yet again, another nobleman was on his way. God, this is slowly beginning to feel like a tower defense game. This time, it was John Tron Snow. To save time, all the funny stuff has just been deleted and the ultimate evil is now simply planning his destruction. Lord Middlefinger's skills in verbal abuse were no protection against the snarling creatures of the Horde. He, too, would not be partaking in any festivities. Lord Middlefinger joined the wedding party. There he began indiscriminately insulting people. Although this was somewhat amusing, it could not quite mask the fact that the unspeakable evil had failed. Hang on, that's not a nobleman. Peter Relish took care of the realm's finances. Actually, he was not a nobleman, but his lack of manners had led to him being given the name of Lord Middlefinger. Of course, the ultimate evil did not care about such trivialities, but did arrange for his earliest demise. Although the ultimate evil found Ransom Bolton's fondness for unconventional torture practices one of his better points, it did in the end help to ensure his demise. I don't believe it! Ransom Bolton did make it to the castle and wedding party. Very disappointing, I must say. I had expected better. It seems this realm has more nobles than I've had hot dinners. Another one. Ransom Bolton was on the way. There's little good to say about him. His penchant for torture made the ultimate evil feel quite kindly disposed towards him. Despite this, however, he would not reach the castle alive. Sandman Clegane had slurped his last cup of tea and lay on the ground like a whipped dog. The violence-obsessed evil had triumphed once more. Do you remember the bit about it being important that Sandman Clegane must not reach the castle? Ring any bells? Well, he just reached it. Good grief! For once, can't you just do things the way I say? Sandman Clegane, a feared warrior, was just setting out for Joffrey's wedding. The careless evil should be wary of his strong army. Under no circumstances must he be allowed to reach the wedding party. Karl Franz von Realmland had little to counter the Horde with, and fell to the forces of chaos. That'll teach him to sneak into another fantasy universe. The Horde was unable to defeat Karl Franz von Realmland. This was no surprise, as he was a veteran of countless battles against chaos. He arrived at the wedding party effortlessly. Karl Franz von Realmland was on the way to the celebrations to offer his congratulations to Joffrey on his wedding day. He was particularly known for his warhammer. Get it? Warhammer. No, you don't get it, do you? Oh, never mind, just stop him. Arthur Minithrill was defeated. Once again, the ultimate evil had triumphed. Wait, didn't he just twitch a bit? No, sorry, my mistake. Would be silly if he suddenly arose again as an undead, wouldn't it? Arthur Minithrill had reached the wedding. There he was heard babbling something like, "Frostgarn is hungry," but that was of little concern to the unsuccessful evil, who had been unable to stop him. Another nobleman. Will this never end? This time it was Arthur Minithrill. Arthur was still mourning his father, who had recently passed away under mysterious circumstances. The ultimate evil swore that he would unite him with his father very soon. As Oberyn Martell went to the ground, a tacky toy doll representing an unrealistic ideal of beauty slipped from his hands. It would be interesting to pursue this further, but the ultimate evil had no fascination for toys, just chaos and destruction. Amazingly, Oberyn Martell made it to the wedding and began to sell amusing children's toys. The incompetent evil had failed once again. Everything must come to an end, even nobles arriving. The last of them was on the way. Oberyn Martell was travelling in search of his sister's murderer and selling amusing toys on the side. Both would prove of no help to him, because the ultimate evil had already signed his death warrant. At last, the endless stream of wedding guests dried up. The celebrations in the castle were about to begin. The wedding-crashing evil estimated that it would take about 6 minutes before the wedding guests had built up enough Dutch courage to start a major attack on the dungeon. Word had spread that accidents were occurring on the way to the wedding. The ultimate evil had to plan on some decoy groups appearing in future, timed to arrive simultaneously with the real ones from several different directions. To be safe, it would have to destroy all of them, as it would be impossible to tell which were the real ones. The horde of the unstoppable evil ensured King Joffrey and his wedding party came to a sticky end. This event would later be recorded in the history books under the name Bloody Wedding. Not very pithy, I know, but at least it prevents any licensing issues. Paying no attention to this in the slightest, the unspeakable evil now turned its attentions to the main goal, King's Ending.